Good morning, everybody. I'd like to say thank you to those of you who are joining us both in the audience, those of you on staff as well, those of you joining us online. This is a special open session, and this will be about a 5-minute open session, then we'll move towards a retreat. So I'd like to call this special open session in order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Board, I have a motion to approve the agenda for August 2nd, 2025 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Vice President Greider, seconded by Treasurer Owens. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion passes. The board, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Vice President Greider, seconded by Treasurer Owens. Board, before voting, is there any discussion on the two agenda items? Okay, seeing that there are no comments that a board member wants to make, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Board, I have a motion to adjourn the special open session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vice President Greider, second by Director Harmon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. At this time, I'd like to call to order our board retreat. I want to again thank you all for being here. This is a commitment to the district, and you've all demonstrated that in this gathering. Both of you who are here observing, those watching online, and all the staff who are gathered together. Today is a chance to focus on reflection, collaboration, and strategic thinking. This retreat is not about looking where we are.
Can you hear me?
Oh, somebody.
You turned your mic on?
Hi, everybody. So we have somebody joining us. Director Olkey is joining us online, and I'm going to push buttons and see what button works. So, hi there. So Director Olkey is joining us online as well, and we'll
Still
update.
says it's off.
Hit unmute there on the right.
Yeah.
There we go. I can hear you. Hi.
Okay. Can you mute your mic, Sarah? And then we'll take care of that. Thank you so much. So this is a meeting we had scheduled for the last couple of months. It was on the July board agenda. This is our yearly retreat, and we're opening today's meeting with open minds, a spirit of partnership, and a shared commitment to doing what's best for students and the families we serve. We want this to be the best school district for all students, and we get a chance to pursue that in this meeting. This meeting will have this retreat will have two main sections. The first section is a board training, and the second section will be some other conversations that help us lead as board members. So for that, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Mr. John Downs, MSBA's Director of Board Development, and Susan Goldhammer, MSBA's Chief Law and Policy. They will spend the next 2 hours reviewing board governance. The hope is that if the board performs better, governs better, the district runs better. And so we get a chance to learn some recommendations, what that looks like, and best practices. So with that, I'd like to invite John Downs to come and begin our presentation.
Good
Thank you
morning,
so much.
everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Great. Good.
Good. Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it. I know that you worked just a few weeks ago with Susan and Lisa. Lisa really wanted to be here for this second conversation, but sadly, she was forced to spend 10 days touring Europe.
Oh, yeah. I know, that's
she
bad.
is unable to come today. So I'm happy to step in as the relief pitcher, as it were, and continue our conversation about effective governance. I've talked in preparation, we talked with both Mark and Stephen, and they both indicated to us that the board members are very focused on improving our practices when it comes to effective governance and learning more about effective governance, and that's great because that makes our job way, way easier when you all are invested in doing what's best for all the students in your district. So we're going to be talking a lot today, and so I know we have one person, some parts of our conversation will be like with a shoulder partner, so if it sounded like your mobile board member might be able to hear you all if we can include her in those conversations as your shoulder partner. Because I want to make sure everybody's able to participate. But to start with, I would love for us to warm up a little bit by sharing briefly with the group your name, how long you've been on the board, and one thing that makes you proud about the Francis Howell School District. So you may think about that one for just a second. And Stephen gets to go first.
Right.
As president.
So Stephen Blair, I've been on the board since April of 24, and a couple years ago I moved here because the reputation of Francis Howell was so great. I chose the school district over others, and the reputation is what makes it great, and because the reputation is what gets built by all the teachers, all the admin, and that's what I'm really proud of.
Great.
We get Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wolke, and that's my dog's barking in the background. I'm in Michigan right now, so I've been elected. I was elected in April of 25, and one of the things that I'm super proud of is not only am I a mother who raised 2 children in the district, so, you know, that had sorry guys, wonderful experiences. I'm also a teacher. And so one of the things I'm most proud of is our teachers and our educators and what they give to make our district successful, and how they continuously go above and beyond to, despite, you know, all the odds that we're facing right now in education. And that's what I'm proud of.
Correct.
Thank you.
Amy Greider. I was elected this April also. Oh, microphone, sorry. Amy Greider. I was also elected this April. Lots of things obviously make me proud about this district, but as somebody who grew up here, graduated in the district, I would say the opportunities that this district has. And I graduated in 1994, so I've been here a minute.
Let's not say when we.
But it's even when I was in school, the opportunities that we had were amazing. I got to travel around the country with my show choir and do just all kinds of things. And then my 2 older kids who've also graduated through the district.
Ours the best.
Yes, who've already graduated through the district also had awesome opportunities. So I just see that continuing for decades, and I think that is pretty phenomenal.
Great.
Okay. Hi, I'm Carol Owens, and I'm a retired music teacher, so I loved what she just said.
Me too.
You're what?
I was a retired music teacher also.
Oh, very nice.
Gosh, I like you even more now. And I've been on the board since last year. I ran because I wanted to help teachers and students. And very quick story, I'm proud of this district because of the people that work in it. That would be staff and students. Was at my knee doctor the other day, and he gave me a beautiful testimonial about his daughter. He said they just moved here when he just got out of med school, and you know, they really wanted to put their children in private school and build a big fancy house, but you know, he didn't have a lot of money getting out of med school, and they put him in Becky David. They identified that his one daughter couldn't read, and they got her in level in 2 years. And he said now she works for the Washington Post. And he credited Francis Howell for doing that. So that made me very proud to be serving this district.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of other stories like that.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I am Ron Harmon. I've been on the board for 2.5 years, and what I'm most proud of is the strategic plan that's been developed that's not only focused on the past. Yeah, it's a great district, but it can be greater and I'm looking forward to the improvements that come along so that we can develop and improve. I mean, 70% of students achieving proficient in levels in all tested areas, that's thousands of kids. That's thousands of kids improved in a year. So I mean, this strategic plan impacts a lot of kids, and I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. No matter how great we're doing, we can always aspire to do even better. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing all of that. So all of you, it sounds like, are in your first term, and
Not first year, but yeah, first term.
first term, right? Yeah, within your first 3 years, and you have new leadership in your interim superintendent. And so I think it's going to be really a great time for us to talk about governance and things like communication. And we'll be asking you today to have conversations about some collective commitments. Whenever we see leadership changing, it's a wonderful time to revisit what are our operating procedures going to be, especially with respect to communicating, because communication is one of the most important things that all of us do. And so we'll talk about those things in depth. I have listed up here a standard set of norms that we typically use for our sessions. And if you would just, I'm not going to read them to you, if you would take a look at them and let me know if these seem like that they're reasonable for us today. That third bullet point mirrors Ron's comments almost perfectly. Is that all right? Can we live with those for 2 hours? Okay, great. All right. So here are the topics that we would like to address this morning. First, as I mentioned, effective communication within the governance team. And then we'll talk a little bit about efficient board meetings and provide you with some best strategies or some typical examples of what those best practices might be, although many of those will also relate to communication, so those probably could have been combined. If we have time, because I know we're held to 2 hours, we have a little bit on some governance team relations and how that mostly is how does the board engage with the superintendent, also about communication, and then at the end we'll just take a few minutes to reflect on what we did during our 2 hours and make some plans for ourselves and for our team moving forward. So, 3 big important concepts that we need to make sure that we fully understand that underlies everything that we're going to talk about when it comes to communication. And the first of these, and we'll talk about each of these more in depth, but the first of them is regarding collective authority. We always have to remember collective authority exists and honor collective authority. We also need to always remember to refer our patrons to the correct level of the chain of command. And then also, we're going to talk about how do we address our questions as a governance team. When you have questions, and you should have questions, right? You're charged with the governance of this school district. When you have questions, what do you do with that? Who do you go to, and what should you expect in return to receive answers to the questions you have? And so we'll talk about all 3 of these, starting with collective authority. Now, some of you are probably feels like almost brand new, since April really wasn't that long ago, right? Collective authority can be a challenging concept for boards of education because typically in most districts you ran by yourself, right, as an individual, and you were elected by yourself as an individual, and you might have had a platform that you campaigned on. But when we come to the table together, now we have to function as a team of 7. And we can only really take action together as a team of 7. And so it can be difficult to bridge that change from being an individual to being one member of a team of 7. And so we always remind school boards of these facts. And in fact, your policy 0340 has the following quotes in them. And don't feel compelled to write down anything that's on the slides because I'll share those with Mark and Stephen and then they can distribute them to you. But that policy says in part, authority rests with the board in legal session and no individual board member has legal authority. And then later in the same policy, the board has established as its policy to support the board once a legal decision has been made by majority vote. So once the board votes on something, we all support that decision. Even if we don't agree with it, we still need to respect the decisions. And collective authority has been upheld by our court system. In 1996, the quote from that case was, unless otherwise authorized by the board, individual members are not empowered to act and cannot govern. So it's just very important for us to remember that we need to govern together as a collective body. That can be difficult. It can be difficult for a lot of reasons. Some are, for example, you might not always agree. You probably won't always agree. Maybe, okay, might just be me, and I might be a weirdo, right? But I kind of believe one of the main points of elective representative government is that you're supposed to have robust conversation about important topics to come to consensus about that and then vote, right? You shouldn't always agree. If you're always agreeing, as they say, somebody probably isn't thinking. And so you might be in the minority sometimes, which can make it challenging. Also, the next two are the really big ones for most new board members especially. Patrons or your voters and your district staff might have the misconception that you as a board member can do things individually. They don't understand collective authority. They might not have ever even heard the term collective authority, and so it's really important to help them understand that concept. It is also challenging to act in a group. It's a lot easier just to make decisions as an individual and just have people do what you say. That's part of the reason that we don't do things that way. 7 heads around the table will make reasonable decisions typically. And then sometimes we just have a lack of teamwork or diplomacy skills, which can make negotiating collective authority challenging. So I'm going to ask you to engage in a couple of scenarios today. And so during these scenarios, I'm going to ask you to talk to a shoulder partner for just a couple of minutes. I like to keep these short. And then we'll share out as a group. So the first one is, board member Kevin sees a viral social media post about a student allegedly being bullied. Without discussing the situation with the superintendent or informing the board, he posts on his first personal Facebook account, quote, "This kind of behavior is unacceptable in our schools. I'll be investigating and holding staff accountable. This stops now." All of our examples are drawn from real life. We changed the names and a few of the details to protect the innocent and the guilty. But this is drawn on a real situation. So, questions. What governance issues are raised by Kevin's post? How might this affect due process, trust, or public perception? And what role should individual board members play in public controversies? Chat with your neighbor for just a couple of minutes, and then maybe Ron.
I think you two are.
Can chat together. Yeah.
Sarah.
Oh, I thought you two were gonna be able to.
She was expecting
Didn't speak to the proper people.
what do you think about the Kevin story?
Yeah, I will be investigating. It
What-
definitely.
what the chain of command is involved,
Are
chain of
on the
command.
individual and makes them sound like they're like rogue and,
Okay.
not operating as a collective unit. So I think it's the personal pronouns that are in that statement, but also the sentiment behind it.
And the public gets the wrong idea.
I don't know
Yeah.
that that's also saying.
And then what about putting it on Facebook? It's just been a post. But what rule are you breaking?
The idea is just assuming viral messages accurate. This is unacceptable. We don't know the information. The language of I will be one for these guys accountable. That's not what members.
And you're not solving anything.
Come on, Kevin.
Right.
Thank you. So, Sarah,
You're out of your
are you
lane.
available for the future conversations like this for the next 2 hours? Are you able to participate by video, or do you need to go somewhere?
Well, it's gonna be difficult.
I like this. I'll be investigating.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
No one's awake yet.
You're not the
If
boss.
it's possible, I really wanna hear this training
And no
though.
boards.
Please, yeah, I just want to make sure that's why I'm with Amy. That way,
Well, we're the
there's
boss,
a
but we're not.
breakout
A lot
question
of
that
everybody.
you can't be a part of, then Amy and I
We're
can
the boss of
still
one.
talk and cover. Make sense?
Yeah, I'm covered. I'd like to, I like listening and that's easy for me right now. I can totally listen, but participating is gonna be difficult.
That makes sense. Go ahead, mute your mic, and we're gonna jump to the next part.
I knew it was gonna be challenging.
So what do you think?
It was a mess.
Kevin's gotta get it
It
together.
was a hot mess.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, so what about specifically? What do we think?
Individual, not collective. Individuals can't act alone, should not act alone on the board. Should have everybody.
Yeah, and there are a lot of layers to this,
And they
Right.
don't have the authority to do any of this.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The board shouldn't be investigating anything.
No.
like anything. That's the whole reason you hire these people. And for a lot of reasons that we'll come to later, like at the end of the day, the board might be charged with being the impartial authority if, for example, there were a personnel or disciplinary matter, and you need to be neutral. So when you get involved in investigations, it's hard to maintain neutrality. And even if you can, it's almost impossible to maintain the appearance of neutrality, right?
And
So-
then they're also only hearing one
Right.
side of the story. They're hearing,
Yeah, there's no due
Gossip.
process there.
yeah.
Right, yeah, lots of things. But this kind of thing we see in other districts a lot. And so,
Okay.
yeah, we need to try to avoid these things because there are consequences for violating collective authority. Frustration for everyone, including the whole board, usually if we have individuals that are acting outside the scope of the collective authority, right? Sometimes the superintendent or the board president might have to intervene, and that isn't usually fun for anyone. Staff it can really have a negative impact on school culture, on the district's culture, staff culture, when board members are out of their lane and acting individually. And then really importantly, there's a danger that you as a board member isolate yourself from the rest of the board, right? And it's important to remember, on a 3-year term, you're gonna be spending a lot of time with these 6 other people. And you want your opinion to be in the mix for consideration. So we all have to work together as a team and work hard not to isolate ourselves. One of the other challenges we face outside of collective authority is how do we respond when we hear concerns? Because in my experience, not a lot of people come up to board members telling them about all the great things that are happening, right? Your experience with the doctor is a little bit different. Lots of times what we hear are complaints, right, and concerns. In fact, you'll hear people come up to you and say, everyone thinks, or the teachers are all frustrated that. And you'll hear those things all the time, especially if you're out at events, district events. And it's really important for school board members to keep in mind that each anecdotal story doesn't represent a whole group necessarily. It doesn't represent a whole segment of your stakeholders. And we have to keep in mind what we call volume versus volume. A small number of people, very loud volume is not the same as a volume of a lot of people coming to you with a concern. Anything you do, you know this, even if you've only been here since April, everything you do is going to upset someone. If you gave away free ice cream, somebody would be mad about it, right? And so there's no way you can please everyone, so you're always going to have a small number of loud people who are upset. Boards need to rise above that, get reliable and representative data from your stakeholders, figure out what does our whole community, how do they feel as a whole about this situation? And that's how you rely on your administrative team to have systems in place to get you the data you need. Surveys, other things like that. They aggregate that data and provide it to you. Scenario number 2, board member Betsy attends a school open house and is approached by a parent upset that their child was not selected for the gifted program. After hearing the story, Betsy tells the parent, "That doesn't sound right. I'll talk to the superintendent about it." She emails the superintendent that night, asking them to investigate the student's placement and reach out to the parent. So, some questions. Did Betsy overstep her role? What could she have done instead? And how might actions like this impact the superintendent-board relationship? That last one's really important to discuss. Okay, spend just a couple minutes talking about that.
Yes, she overstepped her role. She should have told her parent to contact the teacher.
Yeah, she should have gone through the.
Go through the chain of
those
command.
steps going back down. It
Yeah.
should have been me going to the superintendent, or you going to the superintendent. Or Betsy.
And there's last two actions, how I expect the superintendent and board relationship. Well, then the
You see,
superintendent has
better
to
than the last
say,
person. But Betsy's doing better than Kevin.
this is not the way
Kevin
to
was
do
way
this.
off, but Betsy's
Yeah,
doing a
and
little
he's
bit
not
better.
gonna trust.
Yeah,
That's how you
and
learn
the
it.
superintendent probably wouldn't say it to you.
Okay, so that even
Yeah.
folks judgment, so like, I'm already agreeing
You
with
know,
so
they
much.
feel uncomfortable.
So, not as many,
Yeah.
but to say,
They need to.
what I would like to say is, why don't you email me and I'll pass it on, that way do the exact words.
Yeah.
I mean, that would sound like
Testing.
we would get it, and then.
They just test it, you know.
Oh, that's why we push it back. I was just.
Yeah, so you're gonna come in and tell me how to do everything
To.
We could, I still think.
I wonder if the superintendent has to do it.
It doesn't, like, we don't need to get involved in that discussion, like, that's something that I think consider back.
So what, you better at it than them.
You know, they have, they've got standards, they've got a
Yeah,
process.
no.
I guess you
would
can say it
reach
in
out to
a kind way.
that teacher, that does the
Next time,
recommendation, that
you need to go
understands.
to.
They're gonna be asking me to talk to that principal.
And,
Get the principal
but the
under.
thing is, the board members shouldn't be doing it. They should
And then,
tell
you know,
the
she's like,
parent.
yes, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this.
You know, to go
Then it's
to
like,
the-
well, you know, I don't agree.
And
with
do ask to see the
necessarily say, you know what, I'll pass this on to
That's not good.
the
That's not the
superintendent
role.
to get in touch with
Yeah.
somebody or something, but I don't really know.
I mean, I
I can
guess
say
you
that's
could-
out of the realm of my understanding, you know.
That's the whole judgment.
They usually tell you that when they give you the results, to say, no, they didn't qualify, yes, they did.
Yeah, I'm saying, if you want me to email.
I mean, you know your child.
So don't overpromise.
Okay, I'm hearing great conversation. What do you think?
Betsy did overstep her role.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Right.
Betsy's better than Kevin.
Yeah.
Betsy's doing good.
I mean, in all these situations, the people are doing what they think is best.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we always have to keep in mind. People don't do things to be evil, generally.
They want to help.
They are trying to help, right? And so it's really, Betsy is trying to help this parent. But yes, she's overstepped her role. What could she have done instead?
Told her to talk to the teacher, or I guess the classroom teacher, and then if she wants, I'm sure she probably got the results of the testing.
Right.
I don't know if you do that, is that right? The-
Typically, yes.
Yeah, and just tell her to have a conversation with the people that were involved in this. But, you know, we all think our kids are the smartest, but not
Right.
always the case.
I just think it's always good to establish, to push it back to like, that's really kind of out of the realm of my responsibility. I was like,
Yeah.
have you talked to the teacher? I think it's fair to be empathetic and curious, but ultimately to direct them back to that chain of command,
And
essentially.
it shouldn't go to the superintendent.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about this later. I would never, ever suggest that you say, hey, I don't wanna talk to you about this, or I shouldn't talk to you about this. It's always good to acknowledge how someone's feeling and saying, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I spent a lot of time in my role as an administrator telling people I was sorry about things that I had nothing to do with,
Yeah.
right? That's part of what we do in these leadership positions is we help people to feel better by listening to them and letting them know that we're sorry that that happened to them. But yes, then always redirecting them to the appropriate level in the chain of command, right? We need to send people to the place where their problem could actually be solved if it's solvable, right? And oftentimes, most people don't realize this until they're on the board. Oftentimes, we have situations where people skip all of those other levels and go straight to the top. I can't tell you how many times as a superintendent I had to say to a board member, this is the first time I'm hearing this. Because they've skipped all the steps and gone straight to you. So the more that board members can help them to know where to go to have their concern addressed, the better off everyone will be. How about the relationship between the board and the superintendent when a situation like that happens?
I think it puts them in a bad position. I mean, first of all, it trains poor behavior, I think, between the board member and the parent, to say like, just come to me and I'll fix it, or I'll send it to whatever, like that just bypasses again that whole, which then, undermines the authority of every one of those, those levels. So that's not good. But then also, you don't want to put that on the superintendent then either, to be like, our superintendent has a whole district to run, and like every individual parent's frustration with any particular process or anything, like Mark can't have, 17,000 kids,
These people
parents.
are working 70 hours a week already,
Exactly.
right?
Well,
And
and
so,
should the superintendent say, this is not my role to handle this situation, and tell that person who to go to if they don't know?
that is often the case, right? Redirecting in the
Does the
chain of
superintendent feel
command.
nervous about doing that?
Does this superintendent?
Not
He
not
does not.
usually, right? Yeah, because we understand the chain of command, right? And it's very common for all administrators. A principal, when they receive a complaint of principals about a teacher, something happening in a classroom, the principal's first question would always be, have you talked to the teacher about that? They understand the chain of command. Good. Yeah, this is great conversation. So, this is really the meat of what we're going to be doing today, which is coming to some decisions together as a group on how we want to operate as a governance team. And so the first question that I have for you, and it's the first question on your note sheet, so there's a spot for you to take notes if you would like, but I want us to have a wider discussion as a group. How are we, as directors, going to respond when we receive concerns from parents or other community members, either in person or in writing? How are we going to respond?
Is this for when we get a question directly to us or a message to the whole board?
I think it's both. Right, yeah, I think it's both. So for example, if someone is sending written communication to all of you, who's gonna respond? Is that gonna be your board president? Is that gonna be your superintendent? Is it gonna be both of them? Additionally, if you need to respond in the moment, so Amy is at a softball game and somebody comes up and shares a concern, how does Amy respond in the moment? Because again, I would never say, just turn your back and walk away. And then, lastly, how will that concern be shared with district personnel if needed? Because sometimes concerns you hear are serious, and you do need to make sure that somebody that works here knows about them. So how? So what are we gonna do as a board? What should be our standard operating procedure? What do you think?
I like the idea of centralizing responses somehow. I think we all get a lot of emails to the whole board, and I don't know if it's a common practice or a recommended practice either, but I think that people should be acknowledged that they have responded, and I think I felt in a weird position too, like not wanting to act or respond as an individual because understanding that we are a collective board, but also wanting to acknowledge that, hey, we got your email and stuff. So I don't know if we can talk about having like automated responses that come back, that we'll kick back from the board. Like if Outlook will do that, just to say, we received your email, and figure out what we want to say is like the common, like our SLAs or whatever. What is that? What do we call that in education world? Like when we'll expect to get back with them, or how to expect a response, if to expect a response. I would like to have something like that because I don't want to leave people hanging. I want to have that empathy to them and acknowledgement, but also
You don't want to be inappropriate.
I don't want to be inappropriate or speak on, again, my own individual feeling about something. Like, what was the guy? Kevin. I don't want to be a Kevin. So I would like to be able to have somebody that's going to designate, whether it's Stephen or whatever, and then also similarly with Mark, so we're not overwhelming Mark with all of our individual questions and things, to figure out how, in most cases or generally, to maybe funnel that somehow.
Well, and when we get an email and all of us are contacted, what if all 7 of us give a different response?
Right.
Yeah.
There's no unity there,
No,
and there's
that-
really they're not getting a good response.
Yes, I think that probably would, generally, best practice would be that should be avoided.
So I pretty much, I might talk with Stephen and, say, what do you think? And then he, usually will do the response for the group.
Well, yeah, I mean, the tricky thing is though, is we can't really discuss amongst ourselves how to respond to that.
Well, we
Because
can-
that becomes an open
Yeah.
discussion item, and all our texts become sunshineable. So, I mean, the challenge is centralized responses. I mean, the automated responses, I get that on one hand, and then the other hand, it makes me feel like we're patronizing them, thinking that really, is somebody going to, what if they don't, So, but it's almost like, and there needs to be, I hate to do it to you, Stephen, but it's almost like I would leave it to you to kind of give them a response, talk to Mark, see how he wants to handle it, and let you guys handle it and see how you respond to him, because I don't want I'm with Carolee. I don't want to do individualized responses, but then again, we can't have discussions behind the scene about who's going to respond and what do we respond.
If we had a collective response or an automated response, though, that at least would say something like, thank you for emailing the board. Our process is to have the president of the board review emails and respond within 48 hours or something like that. Like, just to set the expectation that you're probably not going to hear from Ron and Carolee and Amy and everybody, but you will get a response in
That makes sense.
X number of days or something.
Yeah.
Is that,
Just to take it off of us for not looking like jerks, you know, not
Yeah.
responding to people.
I think it's very reasonable. And it might not even be that the automated response says, Stephen will be back in touch.
Someone will,
Will be back in touch, because it might be more appropriate for Mark or even a member of the it really depends on what the concern is, because when we think about that chain of command, it might be a principal that really they need to hear back from if their concern is related to something at the building level. So I think some sort of response, whether automated or whether it's just Stephen having to copy paste something in each time to make sure that someone should be acknowledging the concerns.
but not all of
But-
us.
Right.
But we also have to be able to, that's part of the education and training, if you will, of the district members also, to understand that individual board members should not be weighing in separately on these issues, because we do act as a collective. So I really do want to make sure that we're all
So you need to educate the public.
educating them, that don't expect Amy and Carolee and Ron
So
and
you
Jane and everybody.
educate the staff and the public.
So I'll be interested, this is for Susan and for you, John, as well. If I were to respond, I don't want them to feel like I'm the only one reading the emails, because that's not true.
Well, that's what- yeah, that's
And I don't
what-
want any other board members to look like, well, Stephen's responding, but no one else was. So what if there was some kind of statement that said something like, the board agreed that I'm the one, while everyone has read this, the board has designated myself as the current president to respond. That way, everyone is acknowledged that you're all reading it, you care as much as everybody else cares.
That's what the automated response does. You know,
Yeah.
you've gotten those, right? When you email, it's like an out of office, you get those a lot,
Yeah.
that kicks back. But then you would
Yeah.
still respond, but
Yeah.
they would know they're gonna hear from one person or
Yeah.
something.
But
Yeah,
is,
whether it's in the automated or whatever I respond, I just wish I had the language that lets them know that every board member has read it.
Yeah.
They like to respond, but for the sake of clarity, for the sake of solving your problem, or not solving a problem, obviously, but quicker, we've chosen this method.
And
What would be language?
it's
does that
not
make sense?
inappropriate
Yeah,
for us
it
to
makes-
give input,
It
right?
makes sense, but
To Stephen?
Pardon?
It's not inappropriate for us to give input on this to Stephen,
No, not
is it?
individually. The
Right.
concern is, and part of it, I mean, first of all, you've got a crack communications team that probably can help you write something pretty cool. But if you guys agree that that's something you want to do, that's really why we're here. But it is not inappropriate for you to weigh in. The tough thing is, and part of responses are sometimes educational. Like, the board has not met and made a decision on something like this. This has not been brought to the board. Like, you know, Stephen can say, listen, yeah, we voted on this last week. This is what we have decided to do. I'll refer you to the superintendent or the appropriate person for more information. That's appropriate if the board, but almost always, or at least the ones that I get calls on, aren't the easy ones. That's the easy one, right? The not easy one is the thing that really should have gone to the principal, or really should have gone to an assistant superintendent. But of course, they leapfrogged up to the board. I'm angry about this, of the cost of popcorn at the football game. And so if you have an opinion, you can certainly. I mean, the whole point of providing the tools so that they can communicate with you is, once again, this is the ability. It just takes some practice from your perspective to know we don't individually respond, because that is the path to chaos.
Right.
But we are absorbing what they're saying. If I have an opinion, I can certainly voice it to the superintendent or the board president, although I would say the price of popcorn is not really something you should be worrying yourself with. And so I think there's a combination here, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
a combo of acknowledgement but maybe educational as far as please understand to avoid confusion. We're going to have a person respond to your email, and right now we're absorbing it to see who the appropriate person is.
So I see this in two different ways. One is the initial response, and I didn't come in here thinking about the idea of an automated response, but I think there might be some, where an automated response has that little bit of education as well. This idea of you won't get a response by all 7, but all 7 have read it, or like in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, we all receive the message, we're all reading
Right.
these, but it'll be chaos if we all receive
Gotcha.
it.
So to the 3 of you, do you guys like the idea of an automated response?
Depending on what it says, yeah.
But then there'll be an automated response when it hits us individually too. So if somebody emails just you, an automated response will come out too. So now
Which
they're
I think
getting.
is fine. It's like, period, this is what happens. Like,
Yeah.
we
if
can
you
work
want-
on.
Yeah,
We can look at the language, but
Sure,
you
sure,
like the
right.
idea?
The challenge with that would be is, quite honestly, I don't have time to be on my email every day. I- If I'm checking email twice a week,
Well, yeah, but that also then,
So then
that's
that's
so
what I'm
to
saying,
be
right?
honest, I mean, so.
So then it would go out and you'd be
Yeah.
covered, yeah.
Yeah. Do you
I
guys
would
like the
just
idea
add,
about?
if it's, in my mind, if it's about board governance or a decision or action of the board, that's where your president, the person you all
Yeah.
elected to be that would be the person that responds.
Okay,
If
now-
it's more like a student level issue or something like that, and I'm on that email or one of these guys are on that email, you would just trust us that we're gonna interact and take over that situation.
Do you guys have, I mean, I saw on your website, you have like, you can email people individually. Do you have an email for the board? Because that would make more sense
Yeah, I
for
will tell
what's
you
going
at
on
one
here.
point we did,
Uh-huh.
and there was some desire of the board to remove that. If this group is not opposed to that, there is a potential for an email address that is all Board of Education. And that way, if that is selected, it would just go to all of you. Again, it doesn't mean that everybody has to respond, especially after you develop the protocol, but it is an easier way for the community.
I would love that. I think the
I
community
think
would
that's
appreciate
appropriate.
having that. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to have to try to memorize everybody's individual.
Yeah, because I think people think since they voted for us, that they should be having personal conversations
Yeah.
with us about these things, and that's not the best route, I don't think.
Can I ask, on that question, Jennifer, Jules, could you share, if you remember when that was happening, what were some of the advantages or disadvantages that happened by having a button that emailed the entire board?
I don't know if I know all of them, and Scott over there might have some concerns from a technology perspective, but I know one of the things we heard was, with the one confusion about who was going to reply, right, because it wasn't directed to an individual. I think now people just email all 7, so I don't know that fixed that problem, but that was one problem, is who's responding, because we don't know. I think the other issue is the reply all problem with unintentionally creating a potential quorum, because any responses in that thread would go to all 7 board members. And so I think those were the main reasons. And again, I don't know if there was also a technology piece. Some districts move away from those types of things just from cybersecurity issues and those. I don't know all the details, but Scott might have some detail there.
Yeah, the only thing that I would weigh in with in addition to that is if there was a desire to have an automated response to something that was sent to all board members, it would be easier to do that automated response to a collective email than it would be to do it to each of their individual accounts. And so if that is the desire, that would be, if it is a desire to have that automated response for those emails, then it would be desirable to have a group email available for them to do that with.
And I think a group email would create more transparency.
It helps to eliminate another problem, which is if somebody is only emailing Carol Lee directly, it adds a layer of complexity if now she has to remember to forward every email to Steven so that he can reply and then possibly forward it to Mark. That option, if that's what you all decide to do, seems like it takes out a little bit of the logistical complexity to responding to these kinds of
And then everyone
communications.
knows. Everyone knows what is happening.
Yeah, John, I would just add, I think that was one of the concerns was just having, when we did have that all email address, would be that all 7 board members start to reply. And I think as long as if we develop the protocol that Stephen is the person that's going to reply, then you avoid that idea that, you know, we're doing work on email, like we're taking a vote or we're making a vote. Like if it's only one person, then we avoid that concern. And as long as we have a collective commitment from the board, that eliminates that possibility and makes that one email address a very viable solution to I think what you all are dealing with right
It's
now.
much more streamlined.
Talk to
You
the
are correct.
implementers.
I also feel like if we did go with the common email address, we could set that common email address up in such a way that they can't reply. We could make it so that their email addresses will not send to that email address. If we could accomplish that, that would eliminate that fear.
Who's the they in that sentence? Is
The
it
board members.
Us.
all 7?
Yes.
Or what?
Only you could respond.
We would maybe open it up to
Okay,
Chris.
gotcha, okay.
Yeah, so that it would be a uniform response.
Yeah. And so, you guys all,
I mean, how
do I
do
like
you
the
feel
idea of
about
collective
that?
email button?
How would people know about the board email?
We would tell people to be on the same
The
page as all of
website.
our emails already. People will still go the another direction and type in all 7 of our names, but this just allows for some of those to be
In
addressed.
we can talk through implementation, like, I think, but I mean, I would assume that we've got either, like, we can set it up to where if anyone emails us forward, like, we could also presumably create an auto response for our individual ones that just says, please email all the board. I also, you know, thinking about directing them to the appropriate level, and then if we talk about that automated response, I'm sure Jennifer will have that covered, but to say if this is a student-related thing, you know, please reach out to the teacher, to the principal, whatever, you know, whatever we want to put with that, but still be able to make sure that people are, you know that this is the new practice in our individual emails, at least during a transition period, so they don't feel like no one's responding to them, but we know that we talked about this.
Yeah, it'll take a little while for any new system to be understood and adopted. So I guess the only question that I really want to make sure that we answer is, so then is Stephen tasked with ensuring that the administration knows about concerns so that they can be handled if
Well, could they
appropriate?
automatically go to the superintendent also? If it says board, then it's.
Could a patron come to me? Absolutely, I mean, they do every day.
No.
So what
If they're
Carly is
emailing-
saying is, when it says click the board, email the
That
whole
he-
board.
that he would automatically get it
Can you be
also.
listed, can you also receive those?
I don't
Does
know
he
how
want
that was
to?
set up in
I
the
mean, yeah.
past, but
Yeah, I mean,
It should
Is that
It
legal?
makes sense to do something like that primarily because you are a volunteer. So let's say you go on vacation,
That's the other
okay?
thing I was
You
gonna say,
deserve
maybe
to have
both
some
of us.
time.
I'm sorry,
Now,
Susan, I'm right your way.
that
And he
guy,
needs to know
that
what the
guy also gets to go on
communication is.
vacation. But it's best that we not have a system. I mean, you know, your board secretary could also be on it as well, with the understanding that the 3 of them will try and figure out who to forward it to get an immediate response. And that way, if you're on vacation or you're sick or, you know,
We
that
could put the
somebody's.
2 of us on that too, I mean, so that we've got a backup between the 2 of us also, I mean, that's an
Yeah.
option.
I think
Yes.
there's some ways that we haven't really explored, like ways that you and I could work better
Yeah.
together, or division of
Yeah.
roles or something like that.
Yeah, the only reason I bring this up is because, as Susan just mentioned, it's important for these people who do the daily work in the building to be aware of these concerns so they can be handled. Because what we don't want to have happen is serious concerns be brought to the school district and then them not have the opportunity to address those concerns.
So emails to the entire board, I will respond, and there's some kind of an automated message that makes it clear what's going on, and that everybody's reading, everybody is designated this process. That way they know that all 7 board members care about each person's comments, right? The question is, when I respond, would I respond to them? Let's say they emailed all of us. Do I respond, reply all, so that all the board members hear that? Do I CC all the board members so they know this is my response? Like,
Yeah, how do
what-
we know
I don't
what?
think that's legal, is it?
So when I'm responding, because that's why the question is, if I were to respond, do I CC the board? Do I hit reply all? Even if it's a message that says I'm sending this to somebody.
Well,
Yeah.
it depends on how he has it set up, because he did mention, I mean, one of the concerns was that if you hit reply all,
Gotcha.
then there could be accidental reply all, and now we're in sunshine law land. If someone emails the board and you respond to all of the board members, that in and of itself is not a meeting, okay? That's not a discussion between board members. What gets folks into trouble is then, the board members start chitter chattering back and forth. And I don't know how much chitter chatter constitutes an official discussion under the sunshine law, but I want a water board or something to figure that out, not a school district.
So I can reply all, so everybody hears the response. The idea is that the board members can't respond to my response.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see how he can set it up. I don't know what kind of magic that he can work,
If
but
it's a centralized email box or if it's a individual.
But yes, creating some kind of transparency so that they can see your response in
So
some
we're not
way,
in the
shape, or
dark.
form.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
There's the button we're trying to create. One button goes to everyone, and then I'm the only one who can respond. But some people are still going to email 3 of us, or 6 of us, or 4, whatever the case is. In those cases, I can hit reply all, so that the person gets a response, the board members know this is the response, but it's still okay because another board member hasn't commented to my
So
comment.
we have to train ourselves.
I would
not to
say that
respond.
our current practice right now is if President Blair is emailing a patron, at the very top of that email, he would state that all board members are being blind carboned on this email. They are then BCC'd because then they can't reply to that email. And then that way, it's transparent that he has replied and what he has replied with the board. And it eliminates the possibility that somebody then creates that continual reply chain that can go on and,
That sounds like it works.
Yeah.
What do the 3 of you think? Does that?
Yeah, what I've heard is, and what I've always assumed, because I don't want to get involved in your day-to-day, if you guys are copied on an email, I
They're handling
assume you guys are handling it. So I'm not going to get involved in your day-to-day operations. And if it's just us that they send it to, I assume that the president should speak for all. Not as a collect, but respond.
Yeah.
Do a response so we don't have multiple responses. We just have one response.
Yeah,
That's
I like
way-
the idea that it's one.
Just the acknowledgement.
Okay.
Then you appear unified.
And then that way there's communication so that we don't have me going to you going, just.
Yeah, Ron, I would tell you that we do our very best as a leadership team to respond to emails within 24 hours. I think sometimes where that gets complex is when you see a community patron that emails every 15 minutes because they haven't gotten a response. And there's work that sometimes we're in the middle of that we just can't stop everything that we do. But it has been an expectation since I've been in this district that all of us do our best job to respond within 24 hours. And it doesn't mean always an answer. It might mean, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Let me look into this and I'll get back with you shortly. But a response so that it puts somebody at a little bit of ease that they're at least being heard initially.
And that's where an automated response can be nice too, just to set expectations. So everybody's like, okay, I'll wait 48 hours or whatever it is,
And
or
then
2
maybe they
business
won't
days
keep
or whatever.
sending one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because they did get a response.
I appreciate it. So what I'm hearing is we'll create a button, so some conversations will be easier. We're going to discuss an automated message for our individual emails as well, correct? And then whenever there's a response, I will respond as a blind carbon copy, so all the board members know the response. But but that's how everybody knows it's happening, and everybody knows that every board member cares about the email. This is just how we've designated the
So
process.
can we get this in writing so we
Yeah,
know what's happening?
Jennifer has already emailed us a possible, so. Oh, just me, I apologize. When I reply to you, I will blind carbon copy everybody. But without getting all the details, first of all, for those 7 of you who are watching online or whatever, it's not a surprise that every single one of the staff members here are already on top of it. On this topic is Jennifer, but in a few minutes there'll be another topic and somebody else here is gonna be on top of it too, so, not a surprise.
And we can look too on the website then, I guess, too, where that lists the board emails, and consider if we just don't want to post those individual emails and just put to contact the board, here's the email, and if people have it, fine, but let's not encourage that. I just think the more that we can do to instill that collective governing authority across everybody, the better for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that's behind this whole conversation, and one of the citizens in our schools, our former superintendent Ken Rumpus made a comment that about 30 to 40% of his time was spent working with the board. And I just thought, well, that's a lot. And if we could find ways just to be more efficient, that allows the superintendent to focus on the work of the district a little bit more. And so I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation, and those who are able to join us online and those who will be watching afterwards, just allow us to be more efficient. Because if we do our job better, then everybody else can be free
So
to do their
Mark
job.
should not be babysitting the board?
Our goal is to have more, a better, more efficient relationship.
Yeah, Mark's probably happy to do that if he's required to do that,
Yeah.
but probably would be happier if he didn't have to. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so effective board strategy number 1, asking governance level questions, because this is all about communication we're talking about. And we're going to talk about some specific strategies on how to improve our communication. And the first thing is about asking governance level questions. As I mentioned earlier, you as a governance team have to have quality information in order to make the important decisions that you make. And your superintendent and your superintendent's team are the best people to provide you with the information that you need in order to make those decisions. Where things get muddy is sometimes we wander as a board from governance level concerns into operational concerns. And so we talk a lot about what is a governance level issue and how do we ask a governance level question. And we want all board members across the state to be asking questions that get you the information you need to be able to make an informed decision, but don't start to cross over into the line into the work that you have delegated to your superintendent and your superintendent's team. So we use this visual all the time. Your teachers are the boots on the ground operating in the schools day to day, and your principals are a little bit higher than them. Your superintendent is yet higher than them, and the board needs to be operating way above all of those people. And so we use the phrase all the time, stay in the helicopter, right? You're doing the strategic big picture work way up above, stay in the helicopter, and let the boots on the ground run the buildings day to day. So, what is a governance level question? Here's an example. Teacher retention's been on everybody's mind since 2020 and maybe before. A non-governance level question is like this. Can we have an award ceremony for teachers who have been in our district 5 years or more? That's a good idea, but it's not a governance level question. A better question would be, what are some incentives that we are putting into place to encourage teachers to stay in our district? Can you see the difference? The second question demonstrates to the administration, to the parents, to the other members of the community, this is important to us because you're asking the question. We're paying attention to this. We're holding them accountable for this, but we're not getting into the how is it going to be done, right? The board decides what is important. You adopt a strategic plan. You adopt goals for the district. It's Mark and his team's job to figure out how to meet those goals. Here's another example, student reading achievement. Shouldn't we train our teachers on the science of reading because I've heard it produces good results? A better question is, what strategies or programs do we have to help our teachers increase reading scores, and how do we know they're working? That shows that you're monitoring, but it doesn't direct the employees who are tasked with implementing those changes, how they're supposed to do their work. So let's look at a couple of examples. Just thumbs up and thumbs down. Ready? Why isn't the track team getting weight training? Governance level or, yep, none. Good. What's the human resources strategy for securing additional teaching staff? What are the anticipated expenses? Yep, great, yes. Please clarify, this isn't a question, I don't know why we're calling it a GLQ, but please clarify the evaluation process for the strategic plan. Yep, very appropriate for you to ask that question. Can we have all our staff undergo sensitivity training to decrease the amount of discipline referrals? Yep, that's a no. When are teachers going to get on board with using artificial intelligence? Yep, that's a no. Good.
But really, what are they?
What programs and practices do we have in place to help teachers improve instruction, and how do we know they're working? Okay, you all are batting 1,000, so we don't need to spend any more time on this. You understand them. Good.
I'm just trying to avoid screen grabs that have us doing thumbs up.
Sorry, not trying to put you in that kind
Yeah,
of
there's gonna be a
position.
screen grab of all of us.
Establishing communication expectations is the second strategy, and it goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about in responding. You need to have clear protocols in place as a governance team. You need to have a process to have your questions answered as a board member, and you need to be able to share information that employees in the district need to know that you have heard. Because as I've said twice now, you will hear things that these people need to know. So what's that process going to look like? You should have agreed upon conduits that are used to share information back and forth. And you always have to remember to stay in compliance with policy and law. So imagine your current job, whatever it is you do. And now imagine you report to 7 different people, all of whom want you to communicate in different ways. 2 prefer emails, 1 wants to talk on the phone, and 4 are texters. 5 want immediate responses, and 3 of those even demand that you respond on the weekend. How would you feel as an employee as you attempted to navigate that situation? So, that's Mark, potentially. No one can effectively serve 7 different supervisors. And it's not fair to expect a superintendent to manage 7 sets of communication expectations. A lot of them do, and maybe Mark would be okay with it, but it's usually not the most efficient way for communications to take place. And so that's why we should talk at least about what a protocol might look like. Here's typical, and that gold arrow demonstrates where information is exchanged. Typically, we see board members share their questions and information with the board president, who then engages with the superintendent, who then engages with the cabinet, administration, faculty, and staff. Right? So there's no direct engagement between the board members with other members of the staff. It all flows through the superintendent. And the reverse. Right? Now, you can have alternate protocols in place if something's urgent. If you learn of an emergency and Stephen's unavailable, then sometimes you might need to share information with Mark right away. Right? You might email and then carbon copy the board president on the email, for example. Or if you all are texters, send a text with both of them on it so that they're fully aware of what's happening. So let's look at question number 2 on your sheet. What should our governance team communication protocol look like? Which Board of Education members communicate with the superintendent? How often and for how long? How will the director's questions be asked and answered? How often will the superintendent communicate with the board and using what methods? And what kinds of situations would merit an immediate call or text? What do you think?
I'll start by saying I really appreciate the weekly recap, Mark, that you've been doing. It's super helpful to me, at least, just get a download of like, hey, here's all the stuff we're working on in a less formal but, concise and informative way. And then
I'm sorry, is that an email? Or?
Yeah.
On Fridays?
On Fridays, yeah.
Typically Fridays. Sometimes if Friday evening gets away, it's Saturday.
But a weekly, an end of week summary email basically to the board to just say like, hey, here's what's going on, here's where all
So
these things
that's-
stand.
That's how often will superintendent
Yeah,
communicate?
I mean, that for me has been working fine.
Yeah, I like
Obviously, if there are other things that pop up, additional, we get
I'm like,
additional
oh,
communications.
he's
but-
focusing on the right things.
Yeah, I love that. That's been really awesome. And I've told you as much, I think.
Yes.
Makes me happy.
And then I I'm fine with like just the little flow that you had there too. You know, I think Stephen and I had talked originally too, just again, so if he's indisposed or I'm indisposed, just so we've got two people that are kind of understanding. But I think, you know, you being the primary liaison to Mark, and then you and I talk a lot just to stay caught up, which works for me. And then if you're out for some reason, then Mark knows he can come right to me and not, you know, I won't miss a beat that way.
Right. Well, and just as, you know, Mark would be able to talk with Amy St. John, somebody else on that side, it helps me out to be able to talk with you and incorporate like some of your thoughts on this. But
Then the last one, like, if you know of an emergency thing that happened, like with a student or a teacher or
Yeah. gotta
anybody
be
in
able
the
to
district,
go.
and you think they need to know this happened.
So the question I would have for you is, what is an emergency?
Like an
Because
accident or
right,
something.
but because sometimes a board member, I'm not saying any of you, might think, well, anytime an upset parent contacts
No,
me,
no.
that's an emergency.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like a physical emergency or something.
or a PR emergency,
Yeah,
or
yeah. This is gonna happen, or this did happen.
And even then, I would still expect that we would let probably everybody know, or
Mhm.
minimally at least Stephen and Mark, I would think.
Something
know
that
what
will
that would
cause a
be, but-
disruption in the district, you know, or to a school or something.
Yep. So Mark, so a couple things are on my mind. One, you and I have set up a weekly meeting where, usually in person, but sometimes by phone. And I think that works out really well because any board member can say, I have these questions about this topic, this topic, this topic. And I can say, thank you so much, I'll bring those with
To our
me.
weekly meeting.
So that way, every board member should have equal voice on their concerns. And just for efficiency purposes, we have this different process, right? At the same time, I don't want to resource guard Mark. So Mark, what are situations where you would want a board member to talk to you directly? And it's a board member too. I would imagine one would be if you felt like a board president is resource guarding or not listening, right? I mean, if the president isn't doing a good job on that process, that'd be a good example to
Yeah, I
we would
would
talk. But what other examples would you want a board member to contact you directly?
I mean,
by email versus text.
Again, I would say for me, the part that makes a lot of sense would be that if a board member has an individual question, you know, and when you listen to Susan and John, you know, on that, we always try to get to governance, and there's going to be things that along the way aren't, and we'll work through those. But it would be just emailing me your question, but I think it's important to carbon Stephen on those emails just so he can see what some of those things are, because really, you know, the board governs the board. The superintendent doesn't govern the board. And so only the board can hold each other to the norms or the practices or the protocols that you all develop. And so I would say that if there's a governance level question that you want to ask it. I mean, that's fine. And just carbon Stephen on it. I certainly am fine with that. You're going to have things that come up that you have questions about, and that certainly makes sense to me. I think if there's things that you think, knowing that Stephen and I are going to have a weekly conversation, if there's things that you think that could wait till that meeting, then just email Stephen directly. But if it's something that you feel like is more pressing, then do it. On the emergency situation, I would always tell you, if you're not sure, then pick up the phone and call. I would much rather know if you think that there's a potential emergency situation at one of our schools that may happen the next day. I don't care what time it is, I would rather you pick up the phone. And when I say, you know, even on those emergency situations, you can certainly email, but for me, a phone call is much better. You know, I'm not, to Ron's point, you know, there are times when you're with your family in the evening and I don't open my email app, but my phone's always in my pocket, and if it rings, I'm gonna answer it, or if I miss it, I'm gonna quickly see that I have a missed call. And so, you know, it's hard to determine what is an emergency, but you get a feeling. You kind of know personally, this feels like I need to reach out to somebody. I would always rather you waver on the side of caution and pick up the phone and call. And then we can work around the issue behind the scenes. But to me, if it's an email and you think it can wait till that weekly meeting, then email Stephen. If it's something that you want, like I've got a question, I really want to get this to Mark, I would say email it and carbon Stephen on that email. That way he kind of sees the flow of what kind of concerns or thoughts are out there as well.
If any board member had a question that related to any of the other professionals here, do you want them to follow that same process? Let's say they have a question about HR or something for Glenn Hancock, our Chief Academic Officer, CFO type questions, actually not CFO, Deputy Superintendent of Operations. Do you want them to ask that question, that email to them, CCing both of us, or do you want them to pass it on to me and then I present it to you?
Yeah, I think I would, to me, the same consistent workflow is probably the best one in my mind, unless MSBA has a different thought on that.
Simpler is always
Yeah.
better.
To me, it would, if there's a question about something we're doing in academics,
Yeah.
they could email me directly, carbon you on it, and my response is going to be, well, let me work with Glenn. And I've seen examples of the board doing this, like that make perfect sense. It's a positive workflow. That way, the board president's in the know, the superintendent's in the know, and these guys, they might be in the middle of doing something and they don't feel like, oh my gosh, the board just emailed me, I have to drop everything I'm doing and get to this right now. And it provides a little bit of a buffer.
So because some of this will be a little bit of a transition of just like common practices or just, because we're not into that flow. But as we're, trying to move into that more streamlined approach, if stuff comes up, and I've got a question or Ron's got a question or Mark or somebody, and we're like, hey, we heard this or that. Part of it, I feel like, is also trying to do that education and that training again about getting us out of people coming to us with the day-to-day kind of
Sure.
operations. So some of that I think we have to just retrain ourselves a little bit to redirect again to those appropriate channels on the hierarchy. But while we're transitioning too, is that something that we just say, hey, knowing that you'll meet with Mark once a week or something, we just go to you then and just say, hey, this came up to me, can you put this on your agenda to talk to Mark, and then you'll decide if it needs to be an agenda item or something, for the next meeting. Does that feel?
Yeah, I'll be honest, there are times when I've texted Dr. St. John directly when I know stuff that's going on because I happen to be privy to construction schedules. I know something that's going on the ground. I say, hey, heads up,
Sure.
Right.
you might want to be checking on this. So I don't necessarily know that you want to be involved in that when I know who it's going to go to and who
The
will handle
internal
it.
protocol is always, then I make sure that he's aware of a conversation that we're having.
So just put both on the email.
Well, I
Just calls
text.
them, really.
Yeah, I just text.
Yeah.
So-
Again, I think the vast majority of things, what we're trying to do is develop an efficient process for the vast
For the vast
majority of the
majority,
communication. I think there's always going to be some one-off things that you're going to have a question about. And so, I think what I worry about the most is I would never want a board member to directly go to a teacher and ask a question of a teacher that really makes them like, whoa, how do I, or even a principal, right? Because I think most of the people on executive cabinet certainly, are comfortable enough to, because we work with you guys on a daily basis or on a monthly basis. We've got a relationship. I think that's even can be hard for some of our directors as well, because they just don't work as closely with you. So I think as long as we're functioning around this team of 5, I certainly think that there's going to be situations, there's going to be some one-offs like Ron just identified. And we kind of have a protocol on this team where, they're all going to keep me in the loop. And there are certainly, like if somebody came to me with a finance question or, a human resource question, please know that what I'm going to do is I'm going to call Lisa Simpkins. I'm going to call Amy St. John and say, hey, this question came to me. This is probably in your wheelhouse. Can you please respond to Director Owens or Director Harmon? That's how we're going to
Okay.
follow the same
That's good to
internal
know that,
process.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So amongst the 5 of you anyway, like if we've got just general questions or anything, it's, okay.
I have a delicate question. Who handles it when we realize a board member has gone rogue, is doing inappropriate things? How should that be handled?
That's me. That's me. So
Your board president.
So we would have conversations.
So the superintendent doesn't get involved?
The superintendent is not
He doesn't
the
manage the
boss of the
board.
board.
Yeah.
The board
But
manages.
should he,
The board president is the one who will handle it. And if the board president decides that Mark needs to be looped in, the board president will loop.
Yeah, I would say that we also have a board policy that if the superintendent is notified of something that, a practice they don't like, it's something that the superintendent can address with the board member. If the superintendent is worried that something is illegal, the superintendent is the board president also has authority to reach out to the district legal team to engage in services on behalf of the board. And so if there's a question in that frame of reference, Stephen or whoever is the president at whatever time would have a direct pathway to legal services to address a situation.
I think that's a good point, though, just to reiterate too, like, the board manages the board. I think we collectively have to, like,
Take responsibility for yourself.
for our, as a collective.
Yeah, and one comment that came up in the middle of that discussion, right? Again, as Mark highlighted, you work with these people on a regular basis, so the level of understanding is different. Always remember, being a board member is a hat that you put on that you cannot take off, right? So when you have communications with people at the director level or below, it can create a sense of urgency and maybe even anxiety in those people. So be very mindful of that, because I know that nobody on a board wants to make teachers uncomfortable, and it's not fair to you, right? Because some of you are parents in the district, but there is just a difference that comes with being a board member, and that hat just can't ever fully come off.
John, can I just add, like, a parallel I always have is, if your best friend knows you're very passionate about a subject and they don't want to be confrontational with you, and you ask your very best friend a question, and sometimes they're going to tell you what you want to hear and not necessarily what they really believe. And that exists in those structures where whether it's real or not real, where there's a perceived imbalance of power between two people in an organization, sometimes you're going to get an answer that may not be the real answer, but they really don't know how to answer you, and they're afraid to give you the answer that they really want to share because they don't know what your response is going to be. And so that's why these people directing those questions there is certainly relevant and important, but to some other people it just may put them in a place they're just not comfortable to answer in the way that you really want.
And this flows perfectly into our next section, which is about board communicating with the staff or back and forth, right? In fact, you have a regulation on this, 4830 GE, and these quotes come from it. All communications to the board from all employees of the district concerning personnel matters or personal complaints shall be filed in writing with the superintendent, right? And all official communications, policies, and directives of staff interest and concern will be communicated to staff members through the superintendent. So that picture that we showed earlier with the typical approach, right? With that link, the superintendent is the link between the staff and the board. And so your regulation indicates that communications from the board to your staff should go through Mark, and communications on matters of personnel and personal complaints should flow upward through the chain to Mark, and then he can share them with the board directly. Does that make sense? Okay, so the next question on our sheet is, how will the Board of Education directors respond when they receive concerns from staff members in person or in writing? Because in my experience, probably just as many of the concerns that my board members heard were from staff members as they were from parents, right? So what are we going to do? How will the member who received the concern respond in the moment, right? What will you say? And then with whom will the concern be shared? Because the concern oftentimes need to be shared. And then how will the full board be informed on the concern and its outcome if appropriate? Because remember, it's not always appropriate for the board to be informed on every concern, right? One experience from when I was a teacher, we had a district relations committee. A concern was floated to the board level about how the salt and pepper shakers in the lounges had too much moisture and so they would be clogged up, right? This is not a governance level concern that our district's board should have had to deal with, right? And so even when it was handled finally at the building level, I don't expect that was floated back up to the board. But this specific situation, what should we do when we receive concerns from staff?
I guess it, oh, go ahead.
I would think we forward it to the superintendent.
Yeah.
I see no need to copy the board president or anybody else. I mean, Stephen's going to be busy enough as it is. I mean, it's
Yeah, and
it's your responsibility to handle the staffing and whatnot. So I'm leaving it in your hands for you to handle. And I just responded to that way to the person and copying you saying, Mr. Delaney has been made aware of this and he will handle it. It's a staffing situation. He'll handle it from here.
yep.
But does Stephen need to know there's a concern that a board member has been contacted about?
I mean, I think if it's again, to get back to is it in the weeds kind of thing, or is it a governance thing? I mean, if it's, we want you to look at this situation about how FMLA was applied to an individual employee. That would not be something Stephen would need to be in, right? If it's an email about, we're concerned about this entire benefit structure, which might be a more global thing or something along those lines. I don't think there's a clear answer, but I think you'll kind of know when you think, this is something I think I can just send to the superintendent, and it would never hurt to carve in Stephen if you want to. I'm sure he's fine with that, but again, on the flip side, I hear Stephen say quite frequently, we don't want to overwhelm your exec team. I also don't want to overwhelm you guys with things. So, I think it's certainly fine just to forward it to me, and we'll, if it's something I need to circle back to Stephen with, that same protocol applies. I apply it to our weekly meeting, and I share some things with him so that he's aware.
I would say if it takes you 30 seconds to wonder, should I carbon copy Stephen or not? It only takes 2 seconds to carbon copy me, just carbon copy.
It feels like that. I like that graphic of the pyramid, with the top block, so we can just be thinking like, is this a top block problem? And if it's not, then yeah, I would do the same. Ron, I would just email or forward it to him, copy Mark, and be like, here you go. They'll handle that.
Yeah. And now we're good.
That's a good example though, because I know that kind of stuff happens too, where people just don't know also, and they'll just come directly to us, and it's like, ooh, that's not a top block problem. Thanks for. We'll get you on the right path.
So we're okay with that, acknowledging and letting them know that the concern's going to be passed along, sharing it with Mark, and then if it's governance level, also including Stephen on that. That's straightforward?
Yep.
That works for me.
Okay, great. Okay, Susan, you're up.
All right, a little bit of sunshine for the day. I'm Susan Goldammer. I'm one of the attorneys at the Missouri School Boards Association, and I'm kind of like Tonto for John tonight. So I'm just a little sidekick. But we do want to always reiterate the Sunshine Law. And part of it is I think the Sunshine Law is counterintuitive sometimes to how we operate in the rest of our lives. We do group texts all the time in the rest of our lives, group emails on the rest of our lives, and we have to kind of put the brakes on that when we are a school board. That makes it complicated, particularly because you guys are a very new board. It's easy to kind of just kick back on what's comfortable to us and forget about the Sunshine Law. So remember the Sunshine Law, and here are a few points to remember. Records created by board members are subject to records requests, okay? The district custodian of records must have access to records to respond to those requests. Ensure you don't accidentally initiate an illegal meeting by discussing public business or making board decisions outside of a posted, accessible public meeting. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And confirm that closed session discussion action items are permitted by law and still occur in appropriately posted meetings. Okay? So this is actual language of the Sunshine Law. And it's the broad policy statement. Every lawsuit that involves the Sunshine Law quotes this because it just sets out the policy and the purpose. And when in doubt, so it's the public policy of the state that meetings, records, votes, actions, and deliberations of public governmental bodies, and the school board is a public governmental body, be open to the public unless otherwise provided by the law. And the Sunshine Law shall be liberally construed and their exceptions strictly construed to promote this public policy. So in other words, when in doubt, it's open. Okay? That's how the law leans. When in doubt, it is open. And that's why Jane worries about you guys a lot. No, I'm not saying that. But I do a lot of work with our board secretaries, and they are a valuable resource, and they do a lot of sort of off-the-cuff Sunshine Law training to board members. So what is the Sunshine Law? I mean, what is the requirements? I can give you a book if you want. You can read all about it. The basics of what is required under a Sunshine Law is that you have to make your discussions in meetings, and you have to post notice to the public of both open and closed meetings. You have to allow the public to attend your open session school board meetings. You have to take and keep minutes of the school board meetings, and you have to give the public access to open district records. Of course, the big question is, what is a meeting? So let's talk a little bit. Let's use a little bit of a scenario here. The superintendent sends an email out to all board members detailing the bids received for repairing the parking lot. Board member Sam hits reply all and asks the superintendent if the board should restructure the project because the bids came in high. Is this acceptable? Why or why not? So quickly with your shoulder partner, chat a little bit on this.
Thanks to the discussion.
Should we do thumbs up, thumbs down?
No, chat a little bit. Chat a little bit.
We did.
This chat is supposed to be go down. Is this how it's supposed to go down?
Around it, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. I think that's
The question or maybe.
Rumor has it we don't want to all be up.
discussion question versus, what data we discuss.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we think? What do you think?
I think that's not acceptable.
I feel like
Okay,
it's
why
not-
is it not acceptable?
It's a discussion question about the process, so it feels like that's not just a clarifying anything.
If they just ask the superintendent, but they're asking everybody.
Oh, but it's more efficient. What if everybody has the same question?
Then that's
Then they
an
need to
open
have a
session
meeting.
discussion item, right,
Yeah.
around to discuss the bids.
I mean, you're discussing finance, you're discussing operations, you're discussing business.
And why is that bad?
Well, because we didn't provide public notice.
There we go.
Nobody's taking notes, nobody's
Yeah.
recording the meetings.
That's right. So your concern is that this could become an accidental illegal meeting, which is indeed the concern here, right? So it's very easy because this is how I operate in my world. I'm CCing and BCing all the time because I'm trying. It's a great communication. I mean, I actually lived in this world before email, and I don't know how I did that. But your concern is by CCing everybody. The message to the superintendent out, is that a meeting? No, it's a communication to everybody. It is a public record, but it's coming from the superintendents. I mean, we all know that that's open stuff. When Sam responds, and hits reply all, is that a meeting?
Well, it could be.
Is that a discussion?
Yeah.
And see, I don't know the answer to this, so I'm not gonna even pretend, okay? So we haven't had a court case yet.
Oh.
Like, we don't know how many back and forths. I mean, what is a discussion? If you say something and I say something, is that a discussion? What is that?
It opens the door, though.
It
to
opens the
so-
door for sure, and that gives Jane gray hair. So they, all of my board secretaries, I shouldn't pick on Jane. It gives them gray hair. We have entire sessions on things like this, okay? On the response of it, and so because you're on a board, if you have a question to something the superintendent gives you, you send it to the superintendent.
Susan, I would say my concern with that too is have followed a bid process, and this, because we don't like the bids, this seems to, behind the scenes, undermine a process that we're supposed to follow. If this would be more of a topic at open session during a board meeting to say, we've received all the bids, I don't recommend that we move forward with these. Like, that's where that conversation should unfold, not
That's a
uh,
good point too, yeah.
an email behind the scenes.
Exactly. So that's a good point as well, all right? But if you have a question, you send it to him, and he might say, well, that's a discussion that we all need to have. We'll put it on the agenda, okay? If a lot of times our superintendents, if they send something out and they get a lot of questions back, they will then send another communication out saying, I'm hearing, maybe what I sent out wasn't clear enough, or I forgot to include, or I've received some really good questions. I want the rest of the board to get all the information on these really good questions. But please remember, and I have some great superintendents. I've got some great folks that actually just put on the bottom of every email, do not hit reply all. If you have a question, please feel free to give me a call. And that's the tough thing when we do our training for our new board members. I don't want you to be like, I had a board member that was like, that's it, I'm blocking you all. Because I don't want to accidentally violate the sunshine law. I'm like, that's not healthy either, okay? But let's learn the rules and let's get a process together on that. So, which of the following are subject to the requirements of the sunshine law? So if you want, you can do a thumbs up or thumbs down. You guys seem to be grouping on that. Board members' personal notes taken during a meeting. Okay, I was waiting on you.
The question.
All right, okay, I was waiting on you.
I was waiting.
That's correct. So your own personal notes or your own personal notes, okay? A board member's email from their Gmail account to the superintendent's assistant. Yes, it's important that any email that the district has is subject to the sunshine law. Some are closed and some are open, and we have to sort through those. But once it hits, members of our public need to kind of know this too, because emails that they send can also be sunshine. Although obviously we have the sunshine law, we close things. So if it has to do with like a personal student,
But we're
those
not
kinds
supposed
of
to
things.
use our personal accounts to do that, right?
It's not advisable, but I know some districts do. I mean, I have not every district, most of my districts provide board members their individual emails.
Right.
A lot of my board members are not really good at checking their district issued ones, and they have, it's difficult for them to develop their personal practice. But it is not illegal for you to use your Gmail, but if were to be subpoenaed or something, a lot of people just want to kind of keep their board service separate from their personal stuff, and this is a convenient way to do that. Draft copies of open session minutes.
What's a draft copy?
Hasn't been finalized yet.
It's
not been signed by you guys yet.
Hasn't been
I don't
finalized.
know.
Oh, I was thinking it hasn't been signed.
Through yeah, okay. This is actually open under the sunshine law.
It is.
It is open, and so if Jane gets requests for that, she will plaster all over it draft, unapproved, not approved yet or something like that, just to make it clear. But anything that is contained in writing and at the district is fair game under the sunshine law, with of course the exceptions, and those exceptions keep growing. A board member's emails using the district provided email address. You got it. a text between two board members regarding school district business?
No.
Let's see, no. Is that a meeting?
It's actually no, and we're gonna talk about that here in a second.
I feel like it is.
Going back to that though.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
If that isn't, but B, a board member's email using my personal account to the superintendent, I get why that's, yeah, assistant. So I get why that would be sunshineable. What about, we have personal cell phones. You guys don't give us cell phones, but we'll send a text to, is that sunshineable?
If you texted her, do you have a district provided do you have a district provided
personal.
cell phone? No, it's personal. So if you had used your personal device to communicate to the district, now the district has that email. So that's the difference between B. But what E is you're texting her.
No, I get that, but my concern would be with that, if I'm texting and all of a sudden my cell phone then becomes a record, I have to turn this in or something for somebody to double check my text. I mean, that could create an incredible boondoggle in my life.
So let's go to this little chart that you all should have a copy of, okay?
Like that one?
So, in 2005, the legislature changed state statute, and the media was really a big, that was really a time when we were starting to see more cell phones, more, a lot more electronic devices. And there was a concern by the media that there were all kinds of illegal meetings happening, discussion of public business with quorum of the board. And it wasn't focused at school boards necessarily, but all governmental entities. But the concern was that, hey, wait a minute, whereas you used to have to actually be physically together, now we've all got these tools and devices. And although we know that we can issue a sunshine law request to the school district, I can't issue a sunshine law request for your cell phone. And if you're conducting illegal meetings, then how is the public supposed to make sure that's not going down? And so they actually changed the sunshine law, and so we do a lot of training on this, dealing with electronic messages and when can you send them and when can you not send them. And you can always send messages to the superintendent and the staff. Okay, but the question is a board member or a member of a committee appointed by or at the direction of the board sending the email? And I used email, but this applies to texts as well, okay? If the answer is no, then that's not a problem because these rules just apply to the governing board, okay? But if it is, if you are subject to the sunshine law, is the message being sent 3 or more board members or enough committee members so that a quorum is involved, including the sender? Okay, so 2 texts between 2, not a problem. Okay, if you're texting 3 other people, you can do that. Okay, you can send the message, but that is actually a public record, and you are required to either be using a district, so if it's an email, using your district email because that is subject to the sunshine law, or you have to CC the custodian of records. Who's the custodian of records in your district?
Jane.
And so you would need to CC Jane on that message, okay? And then obviously if it's in response, so it starts looking like a discussion, then you gotta stop because that's an illegal meeting, okay? So you gotta be careful about the texts. If you are going to be doing it, you need to CC Jane. And the reason for that is if there is a sunshine law request, like I think there's been this discussion, and we don't know when or how that happened, then they're gonna ask Jane. Jane's gonna have the communication, okay? There have been situations where, even the Attorney General has said, well, I think this entity is illegally, they're texting each other and they have subpoenaed records before, but that takes a lawsuit. And so that is very, very rare. that does happen. And so that's why it's really important for board members, the way to make sure that you don't get subpoenaed is to make sure that you are doing your discussing in a board meeting, okay? And you're doing your communication using the tools that the district provided you. That's one of the reasons why the district has provided you those tools, is so that that is open, and you can separate your personal life from the board business life. Yes.
So if Stephen sends us all a text, but it's informational, like the meeting's at 6 o'clock, or he doesn't need to let Jane.
I don't personally think that is. I don't think that's public business. I think that's just kind of like, we're gonna have a meeting. But I know that a lot of board presidents do, okay? Just to be, because you don't want people asking questions. Like, I saw you texting them. Why did, okay, well, I was texting them, just reminding them that the meeting was at 6 instead of 7 tonight. And that's not really a discussion of public business. That's a reminder of a time of a meeting. That's not actual business. But I would argue that till I die.
So if people respond, oh, I thought it was at 7.
It's fine, it's still last one.
Yeah, I think it's still in that same, you're not discussing, now if you start getting into the agenda, that's a problem.
So if he texts us about the agenda, that's different. He needs to let
Yes,
Jane know.
yes. So his job is hard. Let us all agree.
He needs to know all the rules.
His chart is difficult. Okay, so let's do this one. Which of the following are subject to the requirements of the Sunshine Law? So meeting of 4 board members to discuss public business. That's the pure definition of a meeting, right? And now keep in mind, I've had awful scenarios. Superintendent says, hey, board members come in, let me fill you in, and they start chitter chattering in the office. It's easy to accidentally have a board meeting, so you gotta be careful about that. And I, just so that you know, because everybody thinks MSBA is the state, and so I get calls from parents and community members all the time going, I know what's really going on there, making all those decisions in the parking lot after the meeting, because I saw them all standing out there,
Yeah.
Okay, so just be mindful of that. All committees involving school employees in the school district to discuss district operations. No.
No.
No. So the Sunshine Law only applies to committees created by or at the direction of the board to discuss policy issue, or the expenditures of public funds.
That was my assumption.
And to provide information to the superintendent or the board. So school districts run on committees.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's committees at all levels on all kinds of things. But the upper level committees, and this is probably the area that most of my districts struggle with the most, is those 2 need to be posted, and we need to have agendas, and we need to have minutes. And so sometimes identifying those committees is half the battle. Committees created by or at the direction of the board to discuss, there we go, I gave it away. Yep, that would be the one, that would be the one. Booster club meetings where the school election is discussed. Just checking. Yeah, that's a no. Now, I have board members, like, what happens if you're all a member of the booster club, because y'all are joiners, right? So you're in everything. So you're at the booster club. Well, as long as you're discussing booster business, are you there in your capacity as a board member? Well, yeah, if 4 board members show up and you're there to discuss the election or why the booster club needs to help the board pass this, then that would be a meeting. If it's really you guys are members of the booster club, and of course the booster club's going to be talking about school stuff, because that's what booster clubs do, right? Text conversations between a quorum of the board about public business. So of course we just covered that one. That one's an easy one. Okay? Sam's upset with the superintendent's treatment of a principal and texts board members Sally and Sean about her concerns. Is Sam's text a record that we need to send to the custodian of records? And is it a meeting?
No.
No and no. Okay, very good, very good. Neither one. Why is it not a record?
It's only 3.
There's 3 people.
That's right. And why is it not a meeting? Well, 3 people, and it's not a discussion, at least not at this point in time. Board member Sean is outraged about what Sam has shared and emails the board president to request that the issue is put on the agenda for the next meeting. He CCs the rest of the board. So, is it a record?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. A meeting?
No.
Not yet, not yet. Okay. After receiving Sean's email, board member Sally hits reply all and weighs in. She agrees with Sean that there needs to be an agenda item, shares that she's been the recipient of such behavior, and encourages the board to consider termination. Is this a record?
Yes.
Yes. Is this a meeting?
Yes.
It's certainly looking a lot closer to it. Now we're really getting into the dirty here, right? So this is definitely a discussion this time. So what do you say? Let's say you're CC'd on this. What do you
Shut
do?
it down.
We should shut down the conversation
Yeah,
immediately.
take that
Not
off.
respond, maybe.
Save it for the meeting or
I am empowering all of you because it is so easy to accidentally violate, okay? Because like I said, all other areas of our lives, we can chitter chatter all day long, and our board member lives, we can't. I'm empowering all of you to just say, I'm concerned about the sunshine law, let's save it for the board meeting, okay? I think that's everyone's responsibility, not just the board president's responsibility to speak up and say, I am concerned about the sunshine law, let's shut this down. Oh, by the way, have we CC'd Jane?
You can kind of see by her picture that she's inappropriate.
Oh, shoot. There you go, yep.
Okay, Stephen, we're closing in on 2 hours. Keep going.
we have a quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, take a break at
I need to stand up.
11.
Comfort break.
Do you want to take a break now?
Yeah,
Okay.
Can we
Yeah,
get it
Whatever's
warmer in
appropriate,
here?
but
You're good, though. I'd love John to continue and finish our protocols initially, and then,
Yeah.
and that way
that's
we have
fine.
collective
There
commitments
are-
from this group.
Yeah, there are a couple of activities that we could just
Right.
skip that aren't
Okay.
essential.
I just want to make sure we,
Yeah.
we maintain enough time to talk about the rest of the agenda. because-
Absolutely.
okay. All right, so you guys, everybody want to take a environmental break? Is that the idea?
Great.
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
If you have to debate
just had,
Or egg
first of all,
things if you want them.
Scott, how many people are watching us online? Just curious. And can they all hear? Because I know you have microphones.
Yes, they can hear.
So we shouldn't even worry about this.
It's not as critical as it would be in a longer, when we have the full.
All right. Can everybody hear okay? Guys, want to make sure we use this if we have to.
Sometimes Ron's a little hard to hear.
All
Sorry,
right.
Ron.
So Ron, you gotta get a little louder.
It's not the first time I've heard that.
All right. Okay, so we're back. John, thank you for returning.
Yeah, sure thing. So let's continue. Just a couple more topics to address in our session this morning. So we've been talking about some effective board strategies. We're going to talk now about strategies that can help ensure that your meetings are as efficient as possible. And these, again, have a lot to do with communication, because as I said at the beginning, communication pretty much drives all of the work that we do as a governance team. So the next topic for us to address is managing agenda item requests, because this is common with respect to school districts. How do we determine what goes on the agenda? How and what process are we going to use to get agenda items added for our meetings? It's always best if you have a protocol for establishing requests from board members to add items to the agenda, and you should follow your district policy when creating the agenda, and then you might need to decide together as a board if an issue should be addressed at a future meeting. That's the part where this starts to get a little more complicated, right? Because the typical process, well, let's do the scenario first. During casual conversation at a community event, a teacher tells you, board member, that things went horribly during her recent principal observation, and she starts crying and tells you the observation process used by the district is unfair. To console her, you promise that you will put it on the agenda for the next board meeting. So, what are some positive aspects of this exchange between people? And what are some potential concerns with this exchange? And then what are some other ways a board member could respond to situations like these? Talk with your shoulder partner for just a moment about that.
Overpromise.
Yeah. I think if there's an open
Overpromise.
communication, right?
Try to console, that's good.
Acknowledging
No.
and actually but yeah, promise. It's not even really a board
teacher and talking to the
thing, right? That has to go back to like,
Yeah. One
But I
time,
mean, if it's-
one time I was being, and I was using an autopilot,
well,
Escalated to district level.
and it
take that
broke.
to the superintendent.
Yep.
And I got the principal in here, that's my
Taking it to
lesson
the super, you know,
plan.
like, but if she's not comfortable with
So
something.
I just had to switch gears and do a different lesson plan. No, that stuff happened.
Right.
And then he felt sorry for me. He got me in
We're
auto.
for retaliation.
Really?
I wanted to just check.
Potential concerns.
Oh, really?
I guess maybe
Yeah, and the
she thinks
concern,
she can actually
like,
do
well, not a
something.
lot, but like.
Yeah,
what's
I'm
happening.
my advisor
And the
too.
concern
Yeah.
is that the
If she has somebody in the
retaliation piece
building
is the
that could,
concern.
even more seasoned
Yeah.
teacher that could help her.
Yeah.
So she does.
Thank you for telling
I
us
don't know
your,
if that's overstepping or
you want
not.
this right there? I'm gonna make sure.
Talk to your
So I think
neighbor,
we-
talk to your, or your,
Yeah.
All right.
your.
Okay.
To be honest, it kind of sounds like
Great.
time.
What do we think? What do we think?
Teachers don't have it.
What's good about this
Because there's only one of
exchange?
you or something?
What's good?
There's empathy.
There's empathy,
Empathy.
action orientation.
Yeah, willingness to talk. You
Yeah.
felt comfortable to talk.
The board members at a
Approachability.
community event.
Wrong thing to talk about, but
That's
it's
a good thing.
comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's always better again to listen, right? And I would never recommend that you not listen to people. It's always better. People need to be heard when they have concerns, so that's great. How about some potential concerns with this exchange?
Promising to put it on the agenda.
Yeah. And also, that's not, again, a top block issue.
That's not an agenda item.
That's really, have you talked to the superintendent, or have you feel comfortable contacting the superintendent, or have you talked to the principal, or like, I know we talked a little bit about sometimes there are concerns with retaliation and everything, so like that could be a sensitive issue with the principal, but
But they all use the same observation process. It's not anything unusual.
Great. Yeah, first thing I would say is we always discourage board members from making promises to anyone. Because again, due to collective authority, no individual board member has the ability to make sure those promises actually come true. And so you might be setting yourself up for failure by making promises to people, right? And you also even need to just be careful about that, because sometimes just being empathetic might be perceived as you promising. So you have to be very clear about what you will or can and cannot do as an individual board member. Great. Yeah. You know, retaliation's a topic that comes up from time to time. I always like to remind people it's against the law to retaliate against an employee for sharing a concern, and so that shouldn't be what drives their behavior, but that, again, human nature is what it is. And if they aren't comfortable going to their principal, they should at least be talking to someone higher when they have a concern about something like a process for evaluation. And this could conceivably become a governance level issue because policy drives your evaluation process, right? And so, but all of that needs to flow through him, right? And again, we're talking about that chain of command, and we don't sidestep the cabinet on an important issue like this. The conversation has to take place here before it comes to the board. Great.
Is it okay to give him some advice, like getting some help from other teachers, or you know what I'm saying, to help them through this observation can be very, you know, stressful?
It is, in my opinion, fine to be an empathetic and helpful human being.
I could tell how I had one go really wrong once.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
just
if you've lived in that world, so
Yeah.
you are a little bit of an exception because most board members aren't former teachers, and so they haven't been through that process.
But that's okay to just do that and try to help them.
Just be careful
get through it. Yeah.
that you aren't giving the impression that you're going to somehow take care of
Fix it.
things
Yeah.
for them. Yeah. All right, so a typical process for adding things to the agenda does not look like the board member makes a promise to someone and then it's on the agenda. Instead, the typical process is the board member makes a request, and that request could be, depending on your protocol, to the board president, to the superintendent, or both. Then typically, the board president and the superintendent review and discuss each request and make a determination as to whether or not it's appropriate to be added to the agenda, because some topics aren't appropriate, right? For example, there are personnel matters that we should not discuss in an open session necessarily, right? It might not be prudent to do that because there might be confidential information involved, or student matters. And so there has to be a discussion about, if we add this to the agenda, where's the appropriate place? Is it appropriate at all? And then sometimes the superintendent and the board president have to decide, you know, we, between the two of us, can't come up with the answer for this, and maybe we need to present it to the full board, and the full board reviews the request and then makes a determination about whether or not to add it to the agenda for a future meeting, not usually that meeting, because typically, as we know, we need to post the agenda items at least 24 hours in advance so members of the public could attend if they want.
What would that process look like? So let's say Carolee wanted to add something to the board agenda. She shares it with me. I'm talking with Mark. Some things are like an obvious yes. Some things are, it's not a board agenda item at all because it's just not appropriate for an open board session. But that third category where we talk to the other board members and ask them what they're thinking, what does that process look like? Is it the board president just contacts everyone and says, here's what's being suggested, and then we get a chance to hear feedback that way? Or is there another mechanism that you would recommend?
I'm going to let the lawyer talk about this.
So the Sunshine Law, if the Sunshine Law includes telephone polls where the intent is to avoid a vote in the public. And so I'm sort of like, when in doubt, put it on the agenda, and the board will tell you then whether they're interested or not. But I don't recommend that. Sometimes I'll have a board president send an email out to the rest of the board and say, So-and-so would like this item put on the agenda, unless, message me separately. If you have a concern, please pick up the phone and let me know right now. And that way, it's just information to all, individual conversations, so not a group conversation. But it's you making a decision. Now come to me and tell me if it's not a vote, because sometimes you're just gonna have to guess, okay? You're not gonna get complete consensus. There's no way to have the meeting before the meeting to decide what we're gonna talk about at the meeting. That's completely inefficient, and so sometimes you gotta wing it. And sometimes you have to let the rest of the board know, okay, so this agenda is going to be, item's going to be on the agenda, and if you have any concerns, just contact me, and I'll share my reasoning.
We've had an issue with somebody during their comments at the end of a meeting, trying to put something on the agenda for the next meeting.
I've had districts do that. I don't think that's bad, illegal, or wrong. Unfortunately, I think some of my districts, it's been misused, okay? As you can't discuss the agenda item, but if a group has, if somebody wants something on the agenda, that is one way to say. Then just say, I make a motion that we put this on the agenda. If they don't get a second, then you never vote on it.
Okay.
I do have some districts that is a practice, and that way the board can decide what we're going to talk about next month. I've had some folks misuse it, like, I want to get you on the record about some hot topic, and so, but that is one way to do it. I don't like that method, because a lot of the things that board members want on the agenda, quite honestly, can be resolved even before the meeting much quicker. It's going to be much quicker if you've got a concern. Voting now to put it on an agenda weeks later, a lot of those kind of one-off issues can actually be researched and resolved long before that meeting actually shows up. And so that's part of the process that we're trying to figure out. I love the top block. Is this a top block issue? Sometimes the discussion between Stephen and the superintendent's going to be, maybe we need more information, maybe we need to give the staff a stab at tackling this, and then if it does rise up to a top block level, we'll put it on the agenda then. So there are some things that go down that way. Yeah.
So Susan, does it represent a legal concern if you, at the end of a meeting, have someone make a motion to add something to the next agenda, even though that conversation is not on the agenda for the current meeting itself? Is it better for them to have an agenda item that says, talk about the next meeting, or is it okay to just make motions and take action on what will be on the next meeting, even though that action wasn't listed on this meeting's agenda?
So it really comes down to the discussion bit, okay? So you have to, under the Sunshine Law, provide a tentative agenda reasonably calculated to advise the public of the matters to be considered. There is an argument, so that the short answer is I don't know for sure, okay? And so this is just lawyer guessing. I mean, that's really what lawyers do. We're professional guessers, right? So if there isn't a court case exactly on this, then the question is this matters to be considered? It would be better, certainly, because the question is this an issue that you have discussed? Okay, well, if it's just an up or down vote on, should we put this in the, essentially, I want to discuss this next month, up or down, vote, I would argue that's not a discussion, okay? But I do understand the concern. Okay, that, first of all, the rest of the board, nobody's, can someone say, well, I didn't receive notice? Can somebody blindside the entire board? Yes. Is this good board practice? The only times, the districts that I have had where this usually goes down is when there is actually not a very good working relationship with the board president, okay? And I have had situations where boards, unfortunately, that just, there was frustration because people felt like issues ought to be considered and they weren't. okay, at a variety level. I don't feel like that's your board. I hope that's not your board.
So if I could speak a couple of different parts of that. Part of it would be having a clear protocol that people can expect, even the board members, would help protect that from happening in a board meeting, because they would have been heard, some kind of protocol would have been discussed along the way. So I think that's kind of part of it all. One of my concerns would be at the end of the board meeting, if any board member, and it's not just one, multiple board members have tried to add something to the agenda, believing that the advice we received was accurate, that's okay time to do so. The problem is if one person makes a motion and somebody else seconds it, now you have a full-blown Robert's Rules of Order, a train that's moving. And if you have a motion in a second, now you would have to discuss, like a vote on, do you add it to the agenda?
That's really where the problem is.
Well,
It
that's
would
the
need to be a
problem
straight
because-
up or down. And like I said, it's not good boardsmanship.
Yeah.
Okay? So good boardsmanship is we work with our board president and we get an agenda, and good board presidents make sure that agendas include the majority and the minority agenda items. But not both. Things can be misused both ways,
Yeah.
all right? And so it would be important that if the board operates in this way, that they understand there won't be a discussion. It's an up or down vote. And quite honestly, I discourage the practice because I would rather that we have robust conversation with our board president and that we weed out things and that we avoid these kinds of unusual surprises.
So, if for my benefit, we have the ideal, and that helps. It's good for us to know and maybe identify the protocol so there's opportunity. But if it were to be presented in a motion in a second, I would be responsible to make sure there's no discussion on it. It's just an up or
Just
down.
say, guys,
vote.
this wasn't on the agenda.
So we can't discuss it?
discuss this agenda item. This is purely a decision on whether or not we
Right.
are going to include it in the next board.
But we can't have a discussion on should we include it in the next board meeting. It was just up or down. So that helps me out to know, because that's what I was scared of, to be honest, multiple times is, because I hear a motion and now if there's a second, now we're discussing something that wasn't on the agenda, which is not fair to the public or other things, but this
And
is
to be fair, I imagine if you talk to 5 different lawyers, it'd be half and half as far as is this legal or not at the end, okay? So I know that there are some attorneys that would say that, listen, it wasn't on the agenda, you're playing with fire. I'm of the opinion as long as there isn't a discussion, you just make the decision and the actual discussion is gonna take place the next meeting.
That's possible, not ideal. I do want to honor, we have not only Director Olkey, we also have Director Pushkar who has joined us as well. Director Olkey wanted to share something, and Director Pushkar, if you wanted to say something, just indicate it, I'll make sure you have a chance. So, and go for it.
So would it make sense, because I feel like when board meetings happen, things move very quickly. And we do our due diligence beforehand to research and go over the things that are in the agenda and work through them. And sometimes in that process, we find that there's issues that it's definitely too late to add to that agenda for that particular meeting. But it feels like there's a need for some urgency to get that discussed. Could we modify our board meeting structure so that instead of having comments at the end of the meeting, we have a space for new business items where we can just have that space there so that it doesn't feel like we're making a foul play?
I might need more information. Remember that the law requires that you give the public notice of matters to be discussed. So the umbrella agenda items like new business without any more information is not going to help in the sunshine law realm, okay? Although I know I'm here to tell you a lot of districts do that, or they have these spaces in the meeting where it's almost a free-for-all. But remember that the sunshine law requires that you have to provide a tentative agenda reasonably calculated to advise the public of the matters to be considered. And so just a new business alone wouldn't do it, if I understood your question correctly.
Yeah, well, and let me maybe rephrase to clarify, like, our structure of an open board meeting, as we work our way kind of down the list, we have like the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we have like the approval of the minutes, and then we have like the consent agenda, and then we go into the topics that are designed for that meeting, the approved agenda topics. And then what we have at the end of it is this comments area. And the comments area feels very gray and blurry because it's like, what are we supposed to say there? What could we say there? And where could we, and for the sake of, I want to say transparency, although I feel like that word has been abused, but I want to say, like, I want the public to know that we are wanting to discuss issues that have not, like, been communicated. So, like, can we have a space instead of comments, which to me feels vague, that where it says like new business items, NBIs, where we can then say any NBIs from the board, yes, no, I propose to add, an agenda item for next meeting. I second that. Okay, fine, that's great. We'll get it on the agenda for the next meeting. And then we have that time for that month to prepare whatever our rationale is for the discussion for the next month. And so I think what I'm saying is the comments part of our structure for our meetings is very gray and vague. And so I'm wondering, and the reason I'm saying this is not because I can't talk to Stephen or Mark to clarify things, but things do come up at the very last minute. And it's, I feel like the public deserves to also know that we are listening and considering, and they can look forward to that conversation in the next board meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think part of it is the same rules will apply regardless of whether or not we're trying to add a topic into the board comment section, or whether we're trying to add a topic into a section called new business. So the same rules apply to that. But it sounds like you're saying if we had a line that says new business, it would allow us to more organize our thoughts about the upcoming agenda differently, even though we would follow the rules in the same way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes, no disrespect to the rules, just a space where it makes sense, that the public can anticipate where, like if there was a situation where, I just found out the night before a meeting that, we haven't had time to discuss it, Mark and Stephen haven't had time to get together, all these things, and I'm like, well, I can see if we can, I'll put it to the board, basically, I'll bring it up to the board, because I personally, and here, let me justify this a little bit, a quorum is 4 board members. Okay, so that, I understand that. Okay, so when we're talking, the most people that can talk is 3 at a time. Okay, I understand that. So in order to get an item on the agenda and some consensus about that item and some thought about that item and even some debate about that item, I'm working the phones, I'm texting for who knows how long about an issue, where we're on the flip side of that, if we're at a meeting and I'm like, you know what, I really want to discuss policy, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then when we get to new business items, in our normal structure of our meeting, with all respect to that process, we could say, Director Oki, any new business items, Director Oki, yes, I'd like to put on the next agenda, the discussion for policy 2255 or whatever.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Sarah. I think I understand the question. We can solve this also offline in terms of what the agenda looks like. But do you have any quick advice about whether or not there's any value of adding the new business?
I think it's still a problem. I have a problem also with boards that just have comments. Okay, so just because I don't understand that, if you're speaking as a whole board, I'm not exactly 100% sure why the comments exist, but I know a lot of districts do it. I have problems with these kind of, you know, if indeed something came up the night before, in particular in that scenario, I don't think it should be something that you add to the agenda the next day.
Right.
Okay, if that's something that needs to be worked through the process, and the process isn't to, you know, frustrate board members. The process is, quite honestly, to make sure that the board time, you guys are all volunteers, so precious, is spent on the most important board items. And so if there is something that comes up that you're getting texts and emails about, that's something that we have to let the staff take action first. And even if it is a top block issue, I would want them to try and resolve the issue, because that's how we get the really good information, the really good communication for the board to make the right decision. And the time to decide, is this a top block decision, is not the next day. And so that's why, I mean, whether something's legal or not is irrelevant. The question is it a good practice? And I don't think a free-for-all at the end of the meeting is a good practice. What you guys are all functioning on right now is developing good protocol so that everybody feels comfortable, that they're being heard, and that their items, if they're a top block issue, make it up to the agenda. But that, not to say that I hear the frustration, and I do think that maybe a thoughtful process about what does the end of our meeting look like is a good conversation.
Well, I would say, so Sarah, keep on asking those questions. I want to hear more. We'll see if there's, the core part of it could be answered in different ways. But for the sake of time, if it's okay, I'd like to move on to the next.
No, I would like to express, since we are here, that is a very frustrating part of our progress that I feel like we could be making more of in terms of policy revisions or, concerns and issues. And so I am expressing my frustration. And I know that I can keep asking those questions, but I have been asking that question. And so I would like to see either, a protocol or a process or something where this is not as frustrating for board members who are working to try to make that difference and focus on, the future of our district. We have some business we need to clean up, and we have some business we need to get started. And I don't want to keep being told, keep asking those questions, or why don't you talk to Mark, or this, because I want to see progress. And so this is the most respectful way to see that progress, I think, would be to create that space for new business, so that, we can have that. And I am frustrated. I want everybody to understand that I am frustrated.
Sarah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sarah, what's not working for, if I'm understanding, like if we have something that we want on the agenda, we email Stephen and say, I'd like this on the agenda for next meeting. Are you saying that we need to do something before the next meeting?
No, I'm saying that oftentimes that when we are in the process of that, I think of it in terms of a month, right? Okay, so we have a board meeting coming up, and we have our stuff. We get the information. I think the agenda is released on a Friday, right? And then we have until Tuesday to add to the agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, you can email anytime, though, to add an agenda anytime during the month, right? You can email Stephen and say, hey.
This is true, but what I'm sensing is that even with my rationales, or even with my concerns, I'm doing a lot of back and forth emails and texts and questioning to try to get clarity on what we could, would, and should do on that top level. And I'm thinking top block, because I realize that sometimes there are complaints around staff and stuff that we don't need to be even in that business. I get that. But what I'm saying is the circle, that cycle of the circle where it doesn't seem to happen, is is getting very frustrating. And I realize, and don't get me wrong, you guys, I know we've been up to our eyeballs working on other issues, but I do want to see a space for progress, whatever that looks like, whatever that feels like. The comments it's junk. It's a junky space. So like it's vague, it's gray, and it's not clear. And I would like to know where, if it doesn't get resolved, or if it doesn't get communicated, or if we don't get the clarity we need on whatever is coming to us from our patrons and our people in our community, or this is really where my brain's at, policy, because I am part of the policy committee, and I'm looking forward to making changes through that committee, but I also want to make sure that, you know, as things are happening with like Senate Bill 3 or like the brand new cell phone policy or things, that there's a space for that discourse where we're all together and we can actually have that discourse if it's not already part of the agenda. And
So,
it's frustrating.
So
I'm
Stephen,
very
can I?
frustrated with that.
Right, so Mark's gonna share something, yeah. thank you.
I would just say, you know, and I don't know that this answers or addresses the entire complexity of the question, but the vast majority of our policies go for a first and second read. And so when they're in that first read mantra, that's an opportunity to share some thoughts or concerns around that policy and to give administration some direction about, hey, we would like you to look into X, Y, and Z. And our job then is over the course of that next month, prior to the next meeting, is to investigate that and then to share out with the board, you know, we reviewed this request and maybe we ran it by legal and it was not legal's recommendation to make this tweak to the policy because it would be in violation of a state statute or whatnot. The end of the board meetings to me really have, in my mind, what they're meant for is you know, the board to, I've seen some great uses, you know, a board member sharing that they visited these schools for these activities. They want to commend some amazing experience they had at a school. Not so much work-related things. Now, I do see that if a board member, to your point, wanted to add an agenda item, I think it could be done, but to your point, and to Stephen's point, it would have to have a second, and it would then just go to a quick vote. It would go through no discussion. To me, to create a new meeting section there, your public would have no idea what you're bringing to that section and potentially voting on. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around it yet. Somebody might be able to get me there. I just want to make sure we wouldn't be violating some statute that we're adding agenda items through the conversation when our protocol would be, if a board member wants something on an agenda for a board meeting for discussion, or that would go to Stephen in an email, I'd like you to add this to the next board agenda item. Stephen has the authority to add it or not add it.
We can add it for just discussion, just to discuss though, right? Like, and then we can make a motion out of it if we decide at the end of that discussion that we want to create a motion, right? So that's kind of the proper protocol. So I would say, Sarah, like, if you've got something you want, you just email Stephen and say, hey, this is what I want on the agenda for discussion. And then the open session is where we discuss it, and that can be just a discussion. Or if out of that discussion you have a motion kind of in your mind that you want to create, then we can make a motion to that end, right?
Yep, so,
Yes.
so,
Yes,
yeah,
I
so
think
basically, there are certain things that we're just not allowed to do, and we can't just put new board business at the bottom of an agenda and talk about whatever topic we wanted to. That's not allowed. But when it comes to the creating a board agenda, what we've talked about is a person can talk to me in between board meetings, and I can share it with Mark and kind of go through it, and it seems like it's appropriate, it's on target, and then I can email the entire board and say, there's a board member who wants to have this added. If you have any concerns with that idea, call me. If not, we'll add it to the agenda, and then it becomes a discussion point. Like that would be.
Okay, That's fine. I think the limitation is just quorum. Like we have to all be together to have a discussion. So the only places that we're all together is either closed session or open session.
Right.
So
Right.
where does this happen?
Open
And
session.
there's rules about closed session, so there's certain
Right,
things that
it'll
can't
be
happen
in,
in closed
it'll be
session.
on an open session agenda. If a board member, I'll go back to it, which also be written down. If a board member wants to add something to the agenda, they share it with me. I will talk with Mark to see, is it in line? Who knows, maybe it's being discussed, 2 months from now when there's already a board report, whatever the case is, but I'll talk with Mark. And he says it's in order and the timing seems like it works. I'll email the entire board. The entire board will be presented the idea that this board member wants to present this topic at open board meeting agenda. If you have any concerns about this, call me, but if I don't hear anything, then it'll go on to the agenda.
Okay, that's fair. I just need, it's the quorum piece, because it's where do we actually have the opportunity to discuss
Right, the whole,
anything? And the answer is closed or open session for the most part as a
right,
group.
yeah, I agree.
That's the problem.
That's just the nature of boards, though. I mean, that's just the unfortunate nature of boards, and it is probably the hardest thing I've had to adjust to. And it is just the way it is. We're government officials in that capacity, and everything we do has to be out in the open, as awkward and uncomfortable as it may be.
Your frustration is very common for new school board members because you get on and you're like, things don't move as fast as you want it, or that occur in your other parts of your life. And it's just because under the Sunshine Law, you have to give the public notice, and it's just not as quick.
So Sarah, continue to let me know any more concerns along this front, and I'll see what I can do to make sure that the frustration level goes down. And again, thank you for being willing to attend the meeting, but also share your input that made it a much better meeting. So thank you so much. If I could maybe move on to the next
I have
question.
one question. Do we have a deadline by when requests should be submitted to be added to the agenda? Like, what's a reasonable time frame? Like, because the day before the agenda goes out might feel a little pressed, or?
I mean, I will tell you that the Friday before the board meeting, which is on a Thursday, is when the board action items go live. Now, there are certainly situations where, we might update a personnel report, we make a last minute hire, that I would hate to, we're gonna hire a principal and we say, on the Wednesday before the Thursday board meeting, we're adding an agenda item. Well, no, you gotta wait a month. Like, that would be, we'll just not have an assistant principal this month. That seems to be a bad idea.
I meant more generally for if board members were gonna submit potential items.
Can we just have a general rule that anything that you want to add to a board agenda, you aim for the Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays before the board meeting? That way there's enough time for Mark and I to discuss it.
2 Wednesdays.
That way Mark and I can discuss it before a
So really
agenda.
the prior week by Wednesday. So if the board
Yeah.
meeting is
8
Thursday,
days.
the prior Wednesday.
Yeah.
I think to honor the work that we would have to do in order to support that would warrant the 2 weeks.
Yeah, it depends on what the topic is, if it's discussing one thing versus
If
trying
it's a
to.
discussion item versus a
Correct.
research
Action
or
item.
something, yeah.
Yeah.
Sooner rather than later.
Now, you want 2
Right.
weeks or 1 week?
We have to post 1 week ahead, so I would say 2 weeks if you want to add something.
And in all fairness, I mean, the Friday after the board meeting, I'm already in there working, like, we already have an idea of what's coming up for that upcoming agenda, so kind of like to mirror Susan, and like, the sooner the better,
Yep.
just for preparation's sake.
Sooner the better, and there's just being aware that certain topics may be so nuanced and convoluted that asking for it so close to a board meeting might require it to be pushed back a month because of the nature and the date of the
How much
request.
research and how much work would it
Right.
take
Yeah.
to make it an effective topic?
Right.
So that we understand, you want to just take off that, you put 8 to 14 on that sheet, should we just have an understanding that it's 2 weeks?
I think so, unless somebody's just
With an
asking for a
exception,
discussion point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
think
But
that
if
makes
it's,
sense.
if it's somebody
I mean,
wanting
you
to-
guys can discuss
Yeah,
that ultimately,
yeah,
just
yeah.
to decide if there's
yeah,
work needed that can be done.
And Stephen and between the two of us, we have the authority to not place it on the agenda.
Mhm.
And at that point, we might say, hey, we didn't have enough time to fully research this. We'd like to carry it over to the next board meeting.
And again, there's all these small little nuances, which is where the trust has to come in.
Absolutely.
Because somebody may want it to be on a particular board agenda, but if there's only 8 days' notice and maybe it relates to a certain chief who is out of town, like they're just not available, they're on vacation for the next 7 days, it wasn't on their radar. I mean, there's all these different factors could require us to push it back a month. Not because we're trying to drag our feet or anything like that, or slow play it, but because that's the advice from Mark.
So I'll type up what we've got, and then you all can, as a group,
That would be great.
finalize the language.
Okay.
So we're gonna move ahead to the very last thing, which is encouraging board participation and engagement. So this goes hand in hand with the discussion that you just had, really, which is our goal as a governance team is to create an inclusive atmosphere where everyone feels empowered to share their perspective on the topics under discussion. We want to have open dialogue, but we want to also have respectful dialogue. We don't want to have interrupting, when we're having conversations. And then, if necessary, we could put structured discussion protocols in place, like round robin, and we're not going to take time to practice that today, but I'll just introduce what it is. But first, what makes a good school board is a question that lots of people ask, and the answer is not that all board votes are 7-0, right? Again, that's a place where I might be a weirdo, but representative government is about robust conversation, and oftentimes there are differences of opinion, and we should not expect to always be unanimous in everything we do. That's not what constitutes a good school board. Instead, a good board holds quality discussions where everyone feels empowered to speak, that everyone listens to each other's opinions with an open mind, that you vote your mind and possibly your heart in good faith after you consider all the sides of the discussion, and that you accept the results of the vote, right? And as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to love it when you're in the minority, but you need to respect that vote, because again, that's what representative government is all about. So we're just going to skip this because this will be a long conversation, but the purpose of a structure like round robin, if it was something that a board wanted to do, is to ensure that everyone gets to speak and that no member of the board dominates the conversation, or no small group of board members dominates the conversation on a regular basis. And using a structure like this guarantees that every member of the board has an opportunity to speak at least one time before anyone would speak a second time. And so it works kind of like this. You have one person who's in charge of keeping track of who's speaking, and that might be someone like the vice president who keeps a checklist in front of her to mark off when each person has their turn speaking. Someone enforces the order in the organization, like the president usually. And then the way that we would recommend this happens is whomever makes the motion starts the conversation, right? So when Ron makes a motion and then it's seconded, Ron is the first one to share his opinion on the process, and then we just go around the circle. It's very straightforward, around left or right, whatever the president decides, and then each person gets to talk on the way, and the president goes last, so he skips over himself, depending on where he is in the circle. People can pass if they don't have an opinion. There's no requirement to talk, or if everything that you would have said has already been said, or you might just comment, say, I echo everything Carolee said, right, to keep things moving forward. And then the next time that you have a discussion, the idea is to kind of try to mix things up so that you're not always going the same direction. The same person isn't always making the motion, so the first person, it always isn't the first person to speak. and you could change directions, you could have a different person make the motion so that that way the comments are more evenly distributed. Now, in some districts, if you really want to be structured, you could impose, the board could decide to impose time limits even on how long is a member allowed to speak, and then you need someone to keep time as well as to how long the comments are. It just depends. You don't want, as I mentioned a moment ago, you don't want one or a few voices to monopolize the conversation. That's really the point of having a structure like this. Some districts use structures like this, some don't, and come to another set of agreements on how they're going to operate. So, this is the last of the collective commitments we have structured for discussion today. So how will the Board of Education structure your discussions during meetings? And some follow-up questions. How do you ensure that all members are encouraged and able to share their perspective? How does the board ensure that no members dominate the conversation? And then what norms will you have in place to support the above? Like, this is a conversation that's way outside the scope of the time that we have already gone way over, which is, are you going to have expectations with respect to how you interact with one another? Will you practice active nonverbal listening skills, right? You pay attention to the person. We're not on our phone. We don't interrupt one another. And then at the end of the day, you'll have to make a decision. Do we need a protocol like round robin to make sure that we're getting all perspectives before folks are asked to vote? So what do we think as a group? As someone who's this is the first meeting I've been to, I don't really have an informed opinion on this. You all know.
I like the idea of ensuring that everybody speaks. I don't know that we have to do that exactly like round robin every time, but I mean, it would be easy enough for me to have the list of, I mean, just like when we go to a vote, right? You start with a different person and you go through that thing just to make sure that everybody's had a chance to speak at least once before we go into rebuttals. And I don't know how we time block everything too to make sure it doesn't go on and on and on.
I'm thinking 5 minutes is plenty.
So let me ask, so in the June meeting, there was a agenda item that a board member wanted to bring up. I talked to the person, it became a open meeting agenda item, and I set 15 minutes. So for this topic, it's gonna be 15 minutes, and everybody gets a chance to say it, 2 different things. We make sure everybody had a first comment, we make sure there's a second comment, and I shared that the person who brought it up, the rules wouldn't apply to them the same way because they might be answering questions. Did you feel like that worked well? Do you feel like that idea of, for a discussion item, maybe other items too, but here's a time limit we're gonna set aside for this topic, and then go through to make sure everybody spoke once, or had the opportunity to speak once, and then went back?
Well, yeah, I like the thought of, I don't necessarily want it to be a debate session, because we've had 5 days or 6 days to look at the topic, study it, do our own information, develop our thoughts. I like the idea of one person, if you give them 2 minutes, express their opinion, move on to the next, go around, so that we're not back and forth between 2 people like we've done in the past. Let them speak, and then if you want to have a follow-up, give them 1 minute for a follow-up, and then after that we vote, and then that gets to your 15 minutes probably. So, and then everybody gets a chance to speak, everybody gets a chance to be heard.
So
Just a thought, I mean, that gets to your limiting the time.
Carly and Amy, what do you think?
I like what he's saying, and I agree there should be a time limit. I mean, if you can't say what you want to say in, I don't know, whatever we agree on, 2, 3 minutes, then you're just gonna keep repeating yourself.
I like that idea of like 2 minutes, to go around, and then 1 minute for like.
And then Jane runs the clock.
I can customize the clock.
Is Sarah and Jane still on? Like, do they have an opinion on that?
Yep. Sarah and Jane, do you have an opinion on that suggestion?
Could you repeat it for me?
Good question. The idea is, for some agenda items, could get different things and different rules around them, right? But for some agenda items, to create a time limit,
When there's discussion,
for some situations, it might be a 15-minute discussion,
in those situations, allow whoever wants to speak, they can, but the first time they speak is up to 2 minutes only. And if there is a second time they speak, it's only 1 minute.
And we go around to make sure that everybody has
Yes.
an opportunity for a first comment and then a second comment if they want to.
Yes, that's exactly how the NEA does it. I'm very used to that, and it's very effective because things move very quickly.
Yeah, and that'd be, now doing the math, if there's 7 times 2 is 14, and then, 7 more minutes, that's 21.
If everybody.
If everybody speaks, but that would be
But yeah.
the
That's
idea that
reasonable.
maybe 20-minute would be an idea.
Well, a lot of people wouldn't want 2 minutes.
They may not want to, but if they did. Okay.
I've participated in it when we did the representative assembly in Portland, and I got to see that full throttle, and it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome how efficient it was. So yeah, I totally support that.
Okay. And Jane, let me know if you want to message me both now or outside of now. That would help out too.
I think I'm unmuted.
Oh, there you are. Good. I want to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I think as long as we can keep the discussions that we want to have in this little area where we say there's not real discussion between the members. So I do think that some discussion is good. I like the idea of limiting it. I'm not sure that for every conversation that around Robin fits into that little barrel, because of the fact that sometimes I might have a question for you or for Amy or whoever, and then that's considered like a back and forth. So I'm just, because then she says something and then I have a question about what she just said. So I think, we need a way to kind of work around those because I'm pretty sure that will come up. But in general, yes, I definitely agree with it.
There will need to be some grace as we try to figure all that out, but as a beginning parameter, I think that sounds good. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Okay, so, hey, you decided a lot today. So this was really great, robust conversation. You made a lot of important decisions. We're not going to go through the minutia of each one right now before we leave. As I said, when I get back to work, I will type up all of these notes from these sheets that I've had and then send them to you all so that you can review, make adjustments that you feel are necessary. But one thing I would like you to think about before we leave is, based on all this conversation today, being on a governance team is about being able to work together as a group, but you also have to think about what you're bringing as an individual to the group. And so I'd ask you to think about, what can you do to ensure that you are bringing your A game to the governance team meetings every time? And so there's a spot down at the bottom of that sheet for you to make a note to yourself if and when you choose to do so. What can you personally pledge to do to improve the quality of governance that you individually are going to bring to this collective group and to help move Francis Howell forward? Because as we said earlier, all of you are here for the right reasons. You want to support kids, really. That's the only reason that people sign up for these jobs, which are genuinely thankless, right? Nobody signs up unless they really have a heart in doing what's best for kids. And so for that, you're to be commended. Just be thoughtful after this conversation. What might you do differently moving forward to ensure that you're the best board member that you can be? And of course, we'd never ask you to share those things out loud, just for your own personal thought and growth. Anyway, sorry that we went way over, 45 minutes over. This was a great conversation. I skipped a whole bunch at the end. I'll send you the slides with everything in it so that you can read through the things that we missed, because there's some good stuff in there.
Right, and when you do that, could you also number the slides? Because your notes have an indication like what slide goes with it.
Yep.
But the slides don't have a number. So
Yep,
if you can
I
add that.
sure will. When I print out the PDF, I'll probably put like 4 on a page. Susan, those have numbers on them, I think, don't they?
They do,
Yeah,
slide numbers.
okay. So I'll send them to you as a PDF, which you could just share.
Yeah, I just want to thank you both as well for being here. If anything, if it helps us be a more efficient and a better running organization, that's what it's all about. So we appreciate you guys' leadership and coming and visiting us Susan twice and John and Lisa just for helping us through our process. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Happy to do so anytime.
Susan, can we take those copies of that sunshine?
I brought
law
even
just too?
more.
Yeah, we'll take one to Sarah too.
And so, again, so thank you, and for those of you who are joining us online, just to share this again, there's a resource called the Missouri School Board Association, and they have a number of employees who do things like this to help us run meetings well, run district well, and just very thankful for the resources you guys provide and for us to learn and be trained so that we can be a better board, create a better district. So thank you very much.
We exist solely for that purpose.
Yes, I really appreciate it.
Happy to do so.
All right, so a couple more things are listed on our retreat agenda. One, norms and best practices. That's what we just discussed? Is that okay? The second thing refers to student board representative. We just have a way that we've been handling student board representative, and the idea is just to continue doing it that way. We don't take a vote on this at all, but is there any discussion on student board representative? Okay, well, we will continue doing it that way.
I think it's only really just a question. We take a picture with them, right?
Right.
We do, and they get that kind of like as a memento of the occasion.
Yes.
And they're celebrated. I don't know how they're celebrated, but I just want to make sure the kids feel cool and awesome and part of us and connected. And I just wanted I wanted to understand the full circle of that. So, and that's awesome. And do they get like a certificate or a letter or anything?
Yes.
That's all I needed to know. I'm happy.
Great. Thank you, Director Olkey. There's also a buddy schools list. For the most part, the buddy schools list is the same as last year, although with 2 new board members, those board members are stepping into some of those spots. But we will share a list of all those buddy school relationships. The buddy school relationship is to, number one, help each school know which board member they may be able to reach out to have a more of a personal relationship with that board member, but it's also so that board member can participate in events at that school and therefore be able to share celebrations from each of those schools as well. And we have that list as exists. So we will.
Did we complete it?
It is almost. Excuse me.
Sorry. I'm sorry, guys.
No, that's right. No apologies.
Can I just ask maybe if possible, could I get maybe some events sent to me so I know like the big ones at my buddy schools that I can plan ahead and take time off if I need to come participate?
I would suggest we typically ask that board members follow the e-news subscriptions for those individual schools. That way you can see on a week-to-week basis everything that's going on. So if they're having a special event, parent-teacher conference night or anything like that, it's typically listed in that structure so that you can pick and choose what you think you might want to attend. And so there are some board members I know that subscribe to every school just to have a good picture of what's going on across the district. But I do know that we have board members that only subscribe to their buddy schools so that they can intently focus on those areas.
And Mark, is that the Facebook group or is this something different than the Facebook groups?
No, it would come to your district email, and it would be the as a parent, I subscribe to Sager Middle School and Francis Howell Central because that's where my kids went to, and so I wanted to see the week-to-week updates of what was going on in the school. Sometimes it has principal comments, but it always has calendar events in there, and so you can subscribe just to those e-news for those particular schools that you're buddied with. And if any board member needs help or assistance with that, we're happy to, right prior to a board meeting date, somebody can help you get subscribed to those individual school sessions.
Awesome, perfect, thank you.
Great.
Sarah, I just sent you a link also to that's on the website where you can sign up for the e-news on any school.
Perfect, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so the only other item we have on our discussion is a conversation regarding safety and security. There, a couple of, I think a month ago or so, there was a conversation at the end of a board meeting where Director Olkey was wanting to discuss whether it's the resolution against racism or another way of approaching that topic from a different angle. And the idea was that during that meeting I asked, can we discuss that during our retreat? And it was considered that would be a good place for this discussion. So the discussion happens to be actually in some ways aligned with our board strategic plan. Yeah, so our board strategic plan, and the board strategic plan has 4 pillars, and the last of the 4 pillars talks about safety and security. One section has to do with, I guess, bullet point 1 has to do with culture, climate, and communication. The second bullet point refers to physical security. The third one refers to data privacy and protection, so like a cybersecurity. But when it comes to the first area, it refers to all the different ways where we make Frank South School District a safe school, a safe district, collection of safe schools for both staff and for students. And on the back of our strategic plan, you can see on this document 3 different key performance indicators regarding safety and security. I'm going to read those. One is 100% of students feel safe at school, 100% of staff feel safe at work. The second one is 100% pass rate on physical buildings, safety audits, emergency drills. The last one was 100% of identified cybersecurity vulnerabilities appropriately mitigated. The first of those has the most possible connection to the conversation regarding how do we make safe schools. As interim superintendent, Mark Delaney and I were discussing, how do we approach this? How do we approach the promise of what a public school is designed to do, which is to give the best public school education for all students. And I wanted to make sure we had a moment to share. We have between 11:55 and 1 o'clock set aside for the rest of this meeting. We do not need to take the full time if needed. At the same time, if an hour and 5 minutes is not enough, we will approach this topic at a different time too, right? One of the questions has to deal with how do we make the most real change possible? How do we make things better for students, for staff? And how do we also live according to whether it's our norms, our ability that the board doesn't make the plan, we approve the plan, right? How do we do all those things together? The administrators do the work, we supervise the work as board members. Mark, do you feel comfortable kind of sharing with the ideas about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 committees and what this might look like? And then we can discuss it, and I would obviously will make sure they're involved.
I would just say that when you look at all the things involving culture, climate, and communication there, it talks about fostering a positive and welcoming learning and working environment where all students and staff are safe and supported. Families have ample opportunities to be involved in our schools, and stakeholders feel heard and valued. And then throughout there, it talks about strategy 1, implementing safe schools type curriculum to decrease bullying, harassment, violence among students. Strategy 2, increase opportunities for student voice and attachment. And strategy 3, promoting and expanding opportunities for parents and community members to be involved in our schools and district. That's one strand of the safety and security pillar overall. And there's a lot of work to take place within our strategic planning. This is a 5-year plan that will fall out, and there's only so much work that can be done at one time and be effectively done. But what I would envision is in some of these areas, there's work that will take place where student groups will be formed to hear student voice and to get feedback from kids about what they see are good things and what they see as areas for improvement. So when I think about this particular safety and security as a whole, Scott Gowan is involved more on the data privacy and protection side. Saloom Stutzer is involved, Jason Griesenauer, more on that physical security, along with Randy Jemerson, and then Dr. Vanderpool and Kevin Morrison, a lot around the culture, climate, and communication, as well as Jen Joels, trying to interact and get our parents involved, parental perceptions around school, community perceptions around school. So I would see some opportunity for Tier 2 committees to be formed that are addressing concerns that we receive that might come through, we might get through some engagement around some of our surveys. We might get some data results that are concerning to us that may trigger us to form a group. That could be a short-term group, it could be a long-term group, but it really is allowing the work to take place through the strategic plan and addressing the needs as they come, as we're informed by stakeholders across the district. I see there being a very logical pathway there, and that's kind of one of the things that we talked about. We talked about Tier 2 committees because it really is falling under the umbrella of the strategic group, and it allows some flexibility of which stakeholders are being brought to the table. We want student voice to be included in some of these things, and those Tier 2 committees allow, the structure of Tier 2 committees allow for that work to take place in that manner.
And so Mark and I talked about this for just a few minutes, and it wasn't a lockdown, this is what it has to be, but it was just here's a version that might check some of those boxes, and for everybody else have a discussion. So that's why we're here in an open, retreat for discussion. The goals, and Sarah, if you're still there, the goals to address or to improve, can you communicate what you're hoping to accomplish? What's the goal behind this discussion in your mind?
So I feel there's several, but in alignment, of course, with our strategic plan overall, our community has our community trust, I believe, and perception, right, has been whittled down through some of our policy changes over the last 2 years. And some of the policies or regulations or resolutions that we have allowed to sunset. And I do feel like it would behoove us as a district to not just reinstate the resolution for racism, because I feel like the world has changed. I feel like we have changed since then. I feel like we need to collectively show and demonstrate to our community how we can put not just a policy out to them, but what's the word I want to say? I'm not saying anthem. I can't think of the word exactly, but it is symbolic, and it is something that is in language that is meant to be consumed by the public. So it's not a policy, right? It's not a bylaw, it's not a regulation, it's not a statute. It's something that, much like the resolution of racism is a sincere sentiment that I feel that our community needs to hear, that we understand. I feel like it would rebuild some bonds that have been broken. Okay. And I feel like it needs to be revised significantly, of course, to reflect the changes that we've seen in our world. But I also feel like it is something that people are expecting in our community too. They want an answer to, or a resurrection of our commitment to diversity, or our commitment to our community. There, I said it. I tried.
No, you're great. Thank you. Carolee?
Well, I know I've spoken to you about this idea I had about a One Howell committee. And when I dreamed it up one night, I was thinking, how do we bring everybody in the community together, thinking about the resolution and different things that have happened in the community. And I thought if we had some kind of a group of people that their focus was to create a One Howell where everyone is heard, everyone matters, and we discuss issues and decide, does this issue create a One Howell or does it divide us? And so if you could run everything through a lens of unity and where everyone is treated fairly, everyone is seen and heard, I think if we could start there, then we could start looking at issues. And I mean, I don't know how that would work. Would you have a group at each school? And then they would come together, the schools would, the people on those teams would come together from time to time. But so you don't lose these issues, you don't forget about them. Because I think people feel like they're not visible sometimes, and they think nobody cares about, you know, like bullying. You talk about bullying with this committee. You talk about all the things that keep students from learning and hurts their mental health, because we want them to be healthy in every way. So it's just an idea of how do we bring everybody together and people. So because you know we have all these groups in schools, and you know we all know that we all went to school too. And how do we get people working together instead of against each other? We don't want that.
I love that idea so much. It would reflect on our core values. But I think the importance of it is to put it in language that is meant for the community, not a policy, because that's legalese. You know, it's got to be sentiment that allows us to drive that lens, the lens of One Howell.
Right. And so I appreciate that, Sarah. So, and so what I hear you saying, Sarah, is more of a connection to some kind of a statement that the community hears or sees. What I'm hearing from Carolee was a reference to a One Howell committee or something along those lines. And
Maybe every school would have their own little
and there may be
group there, and then they would
subgroups of
meet together once in a while.
There might be subgroups of that. I'm going to try to apply one of the norms we just discussed. I want to see what Ron, Amy, and Jane have to share before we go back for other people's second or next turn. So Ron or Amy, do you want to share the idea of having a committee or the freedom for the admin to create multiple committees that start, stop? It might be a group of elementary school related parents, one part, and maybe there's another one for this, but it just enabling and empowering the admin to create the committees that they need to address this point. Ron, Amy, love to hear your thoughts on that idea.
Can I add one more thing? I think sometimes students can make some very valuable
yeah, depending on
additions to these ideas.
Correct, right. So
Because
Ron,
they know what they're dealing with.
do you want to feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I'm just curious to see what plans Mark had and what his thoughts would be, what he would put together. I don't want to step on his toes as to what his thoughts would, what he would want to do. So I'd be curious to see what he would put together with his surveys and his plans of action for that pillar.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Amy.
I will just say this is a big passion point for me too, and I think of it as like almost just like a culture statement, and then also active bodies, whether it's the committees or however that ends up looking within schools and between schools, because I really do want to make sure that we also look at this at the district level, even though each school probably has its own unique concerns, and climates and things like that. So that you want to respect obviously the building, but also make sure that we've got some unifying, clarifying culture statements, value statements across at the district level. I will say for me, I know there's a lot of attention that's given to, we talked about racism, we talked about bullying. I also want to really, and this is something that I spent time with in my corporate land, working on around inclusion and accessibility, thinking about our kids with disabilities, thinking about anyone who just might feel othered, and that can be for any number of reasons, seen or unseen. So it really comes down into that idea of acceptance and inclusion. And I just want to make sure that part of our conversation has to do with we talk about kids feeling set up for success, being mentally and emotionally in a place where they can learn and feeling valued. That has to do with not just looking at overt actions that we see with bullying or racist comments or things like this, not just even microaggressions, but also exclusion and isolation. So I think part of what I would love to see, especially when we think about our kids with disabilities, is some exposure and some education. So we spent some time in a couple of different companies that I've worked for, bringing in groups who have people with autism or people who are blind or people in wheelchairs or, you name it, and just talking about what is life like? What is my perspective? What do I feel like? And those like empathy exercises are really educational exercises. And these were for grown adults, right? This was in the workplace and everything. Because what you tend to see happen is people don't know how to interact. They don't know what to say. They're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, so they just don't engage at all. And then you end up isolating these kids or isolating these adults because they don't know how to deal with someone who has tics or who behaves in a way that isn't typical, right? So I think in this public school environment, one of our responsibilities as we talk about all kids and making all kids feel included is to also look at that and have some exposure to that and give voice to that. So whether it's talking to our kids of color, what has your experience here been? What kind of experiences have you had? And for the kids who are willing to share that, but also our kids with disabilities, our kids with, socioeconomic differences. We just have this beautiful tapestry of children and experiences here that is both a blessing and a complication, right? And I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing is really just that empathy focused, that human-centered focused, so that we can really create environments that are focused on making sure everybody really does feel valued. So whatever that looks like, there are lots of different opportunities. I would love to give you some ideas as we put this stuff together, but I just really want to make sure we highlight that exposure and education component to it.
Thank you. Dr. Pushkar. And she may have stepped away. Here we go.
No, for some reason it wouldn't unmute. I agree with all of the comments that have been made thus far. I think we need some unity committees put together, whether it be at the schools individually or collectively. I think we need some very strong leadership on those committees that will keep the focus on how we can bring people together as opposed to singling out an individual group as, you guys are racist or you guys are bullies, and instead create an environment where it brings people together. If we can accomplish that, I think that would be a goal that everybody on the board has been working towards, and we haven't always been successful in doing that.
So there's tier one committees, and I'm hearing, again, Sarah made a reference to some kind of a statement as well. I want to get back to that because I heard what Sarah shared. A tier one committee is something that the board creates, and the people in a tier one committee, the committee then reports to the board directly, right? That's a tier one committee?
That is correct. We have two tier one committees. We have a policy committee currently that reports to the board monthly on policy changes. Essentially, they're making some recommendations, and then we have an insurance committee that reviews our plans on an annual basis, multiple times a year, to make recommendations on behalf of employees.
Okay. And so a tier two, the tier one committees, we also have to decide, it has to have these 12 people, and it's 3 of this, 2 of this, 4 of this. The tier one has a lot of...
Each tier one committee has to have a set of approved bylaws approved by the board for that specific committee. So there are bylaws approved for the policy committee, there are bylaws approved for the insurance committee. So there's some tight structure to tier one committee, whereas like on the tier two committee, it also may or may not be appointed by the board, but they don't report to the board. They're allowed to work through and plan, study, analyze, and do.
Yeah. And the board would still have the same responsibilities we have of the general governments of the whole district, and things might come out of a tier 2 committee that requires either budget change or policy change or all that stuff, but that's a different relationship between the tier 2 committee and the board.
Yeah, so the tier 2 committees really, they would not be making policy change recommendations, right? So the tier 2 committees would be more like, through this strategic plan work, there's work that needs to take place. There's going to be groups that form. There's going to be groups that develop a survey. They're going to decide what do these survey questions look like. They're going to set the cycles for administration of the surveys. They're going to review the data from the surveys and then make recommendations for next steps. So based upon this survey data, a prime example might be, I've heard this several times, like, wow, the adults in the district, the community members and the teachers, well, they really scored this really high. But the kids, they really scored this really, really low. Wow, we probably need to organize some groups of kids across the district just to get a better understanding of what they're feeling or seeing and allow them for some feedback. What can we do to improve in that area? And then that group might make some recommendations about some things that we're going to put into practice in our buildings. But all that could occur through our strategic planning process.
So one advantage of a tier 2 committee would be the timeline. It doesn't necessarily be like a full year. You might be, here's 5 people who want you to explore this topic. Here's a conversation regarding elementary school. Basically, you can start, stop, you can pursue things as they pop up. It's more nimble, less bureaucratic. It is just,
tier one committees
see the problem, fix the problem.
Are subject to sunshine, and they're board appointed committees that are going to make recommendations on board policy or financial implications for the district, right? Whereas tier 2 committees feel to me more like working actionable groups that are working to create some changes throughout the organization.
In your opinion, do you think this is better as a tier 2 or tier 1?
I mean, for me, tier 2 committees allow you to be more flexible and include groups of stakeholders that you might want to just pull a small group of elementary kids in just to get their feedback across the district. I think could be difficult to write bylaws that encompass all of that if that were a tier 1 committee. And I think there's some conversations that, should someone know that I want to share my lens as a student, and it's subject to sunshine, that might feel uncomfortable to me. I may not want to share my full scope of what I believe in that type of environment. And so, when you're talking about a topic even such as being feeling bullied, right? Like, those are sensitive subjects that people may not want to open up about if not knowing where that information is going to be shared, and they may feel in a group of just their peers that they're able to share in front of a group of peers, but you start throwing in adults into that group and it may feel very different. So
then their parents might not like that either.
Correct.
Right. Director Oki has a question.
We currently put out climate surveys to all of our buildings that I know our teachers fill out. Do we have a climate survey in some way, shape, or form that kids fill out? And if so, if that data is anonymous, then can we bring that data so that we're not doxing a child, which would be terrible, okay? But we can use the data that we gather. And that data can be used to drive some decision making, and the adults can handle data if it's submitted anonymously from students.
Okay, so either Mark or Jennifer.
I mean, I would say, my perspective, and I've been in the district now for quite some time, we're very strategic in a lot of the work that we do. We do survey our staff, we do survey students, and we've had a pretty thorough, comprehensive school improvement planning process over the last 20 years, and we use that data to drive action steps. There's always, as somebody pointed out at the very beginning of the meeting, what we look to do is constantly improve. That's what our strategic plan, as Ron identified early, about getting to certain levels. We're always looking to improve in areas. And yes, so you are correct, Director Oki, that information allows us to be flexible and to try to meet kids' needs where they are. So yes, we do have those. Now, survey questions may be refined over time or changed over time based upon what you're seeing as concerns from kids or staff across the board. But yes, we do have that information.
Okay, so we're not reinventing the wheel at all. We can use the data and the processes that we already have, and that saves us time, people, and money. Using that data as a starting point, then, can we assemble I would, in my opinion, I would almost want a tier 1 committee and a tier 2 committee, because I feel like we should have a way to engage the public outside of public comments in board meetings, right? And I don't know if that looks like a town hall or whatever that might look like, because I feel like all of that's already being done. It's just a matter of maybe, and I'm probably oversimplifying this, but what I think I'm stressing here is, like, I think we're doing all these things, but we're doing them in islands where I feel like that all needs to be concentrated into some form of a decision or a recommendation committee, then with board oversight, so we can be then part of and aware of that process. And there's accountability for that data as well.
Right.
Because
I apologize. I cut you off. What was that again?
Accountability for the data that we're already gathering. So I do feel like, having using the data we're already gathering, centralizing it instead of it being, if it's one Howell, it's one Howell. So instead of like building versus building, we're looking at this as a culture, as a whole culture. And that committee would take the data that already exists so that we're not starting from zero. And there's accountability there. There should be accountability there, and even board insight or oversight.
Gotcha. Thank you. So what I've heard you say was, we have advantage of the information we already have, and it helps us get a chance to start. Am I right to hear you say, if we already have information, we should have been using that information, so the next step shouldn't be a step that we are already making? So what you're hoping for is, if there is a set of tier 2 committees that pops up, changes along the way, whatever as it needs, that it does work differently than the work that has been happening. Is that the idea?
We don't need to start from zero. We already have survey data.
Right.
Aggregate it into our new committee and let them work with it.
Right. Yeah. And so that would be the idea, is that tier 2 would take the data and start running with it right away.
One thing I will add to the conversation, just as a reminder, we did a culture climate roundtable about a year ago. So kind of in addition to the building climate data, we have actually brought with me the survey data and the notes. I think we had about 100 people at the in-person meeting, and one of the questions, we had a question about why is it important to create a welcoming environment, what are we doing well, and then what are some areas for improvement. And we got a great deal of feedback, and our team has been working through that for over a year and doing some things. Everything, as you can imagine, moves slower, right? There's a lot of suggestions in there. Our intention has been, and will be, our Pillar 4 meeting meets again next week. This is some of the data we'll be looking at through Pillar 4. So I just want you to know that I don't know that we want to add a bunch of layers of committees, because Pillar 4 in the strategic plan really does center on this. This data is here, we've been using it, and that will continue. working through. One of the suggestions actually a year ago was really around, we need core values. We need a strategic plan that prioritizes this. So that really was the focus last year. Let's get that foundation. And so you see some of that reflected in. And I think, yes, there's always room for more input. I think what some in our community will say is, we've been talking about what we need to do for a long time. We need to really start, like the focus really needs to be on, let's make some additional action. And I think we're really positioned to do that now that we have those foundational pieces in place. And so just wanted to remind you that data exists in addition to all the building level climate data as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. Director Owens, Treasurer Owens.
Yeah, I think that's awesome that you have all that. Just something that I've been feeling, and it could be just my perception, is that all schools do not seem to be equal. That, that's very difficult to achieve because the populations are so different. But I think that's something I would like to see us work toward, that all kids get the same things at each school. No school is left behind. You know what I'm saying? Because I think we have a lot of, there's not continuity between all the schools that there could be, and I know that's hard in a very large district. Maybe that's something we could look at and say, is this school being left behind, or is this, how's this school doing all these things and this school doesn't have all those things? I mean, just programs, resources, and everything.
And that's just in general desire that every school is able to provide the absolute best possible, and there's as much similarities. For the topic right now regarding safety and security, is there any of those concerns you have on this topic as well? That there might be a discrepancy between what one student experiences at one school versus what one student experiences at another when it comes to that? And if that is one of the concerns, then that needs to be looked at.
Well, I guess that can that be that the administrators at each school, I mean, they all have codes of conduct, but do they follow them?
Yeah, so that'll be something for
things like that.
Yeah, and that'd be something that this committee, in my mind, has the flexibility to address that topic.
And I would say from an accountability standpoint, I don't know what the greatest accountability we can have is to our strategic plan. That should be the work that is driving us in all of these big four areas. I know that when you look at the pillars, they're very broad areas, but the work becomes all the action steps that those individual groups will start to embark on a daily basis, and be very intentional about what they're monitoring, what they're doing, what they're supporting, and that just the daily work is what the strategic plan. So from an accountability standpoint, it's there.
Right. So I want to wrap up this part of the conversation, and then there's a second section as well.
Can we see that?
Excuse me, what?
Can we get a report of what is being done so that we're understanding how the, like, just I don't know if it's like a bullet list or a summary, but just so that we're also aware as a board of what, like I know Jennifer said that they had a committee a year ago. That's great. What are we having another committee, and what are the results of that? What are the action steps that came from that? I just want to see it. I want to see what work is being done.
Okay.
But just for the sake of board knowledge, and so then I can say to the community, in a sense, yeah, we have this. It's a wonderful thing. Please get engaged.
Great.
But I'd like to see that.
Great. So the question is, can we see what is happening or has happened?
Yes, and just to clarify, if I said committee, then I misspoke. I meant we had a community roundtable event. That's what I was referencing. And so we have the data. It might have been shared with the board previously, but we can certainly share that. Again, that is really just the report of, here are some things we're doing well and some things we need to do. And then we can put together, here are some things we've done since that time, and here are some other things that are on the radar that are really being considered by Pillar 4. I'll update you on that. Yes.
And then just to reiterate, the strategic plan is a 5-year process, and so we'll be providing updates to the board. We've given short synopsis of what's going on kind of at the monthly board meeting, but then the pillars will be reporting more on a quarterly basis. As you can imagine, it takes time for groups to come together. Anyone that's a part of a committee, they're volunteering their time. And so that work takes time, just like our board gets together monthly. We're asking people to commit time above and beyond their normal work days and things along those natures. So it will take time, but yes, you will see the work unfold throughout these committee structures.
So on this topic, it sounds like what Mark is recommending as the interim superintendent is that the work of this this shared desire for safety for both students and staff, right? That it would be done through a series of tier 2 committees that would pop up, whether it's 1 or 2, different manifestations, whatever it is that reports to you, and then you would then share all that with the board, right? And so that's what we're talking about. We're not voting on anything. This is not a voting meeting. But does that sound like the good next step is Mark being empowered to have different tier 2 committees? And I just want to share this. For me, it's that first check mark that says the goal is for this set of tier 2 committees for that 100% of students feel safe at school and 100% of staff feel safe at work. That would be the goal, right? That's the goal. Nothing else on this list, nothing on other pillars. That's the goal.
Well, yes. I just want to say safe is not just physical. I believe it's also emotional.
Yep. And that's, yes.
Absolutely.
And for us, I think there's opportunity too for us as a board to think about how we can celebrate and educate, when it comes to all of that too. So again, I just don't want to lose track of that. This isn't something that just magically happens by, everybody feel good and value everybody, okay? Because we know that gets lost in the shuffle, but really thinking about a concerted focus on how can we make sure that those kids who are not feeling protected and safe or included are able to share and have some empathy building somehow in some way, not only within their schools, but then for us as a board to be able to find time deliberately to call that out and to celebrate some of those. We've had some teams come, some schools come and show some of the programs that they're doing that have been so awesome. So I'd love us to be able to really celebrate that and have that be kind of like an incentive or a reward also to keep it going.
And I think the community needs to know all these things that you're doing.
We just
so
celebrate.
that they feel good about that.
Yeah.
So, I don't think you can over-publicize these good things.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, the John Weldon Kindness Club made me cry.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole world needs to know about these kids and what they're doing. We have an opportunity here to repair our love, our trust, and I think we should take it and use it.
Okay, thank you. There's another thing that was brought up along the lines of a forward-facing message. You heard Director Olkey's idea. Does anybody else want to speak to whether you believe a forward-facing message is needed or is celebrating the advances in the tier 2s the forward-facing message? Oh, I don't know.
Are you talking about like basically something similar-esque?
Like a culture statement?
For racism?
It's a forward-facing message, whether it's a list of our core values that already exist, whether it's
Are you saying something that we post in the schools?
That is what Director Olkey brought up, and I just want to make sure.
Well, because if you post all our core values, we could include the ideas from the resolution in there along with other things. Is that what you're referring to?
Well,
yeah, and forward-facing meaning we put it out to the public, just like we put out the resolution for racism.
Right. I do want to name that. When it comes to forward-facing, there's multiple different options, and I'm just wondering. Number one, not asking what it even is. Is there any desire that there is a forward-facing message? And if there is, then there's a whole. We don't have I mean, it's 12, 20,
I think this is it.
Yeah, I think our values and everything, we have all of the component pieces here,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So I feel good about that. I think it's just finding ways to continue to highlight that and ingrain that. And there are a lot of values listed, so it's a little bit more complex than like our mission statement, right?
Right.
But
Yes, but I do feel like our community does want to see something. I do feel like that, I do feel like they want something.
Right, and I just want to share earlier during the MSBA training, there was a caution of, our community wants this, or to speak, because some of our community wouldn't want it, to have certain statements, right? And so, so the idea is, what is needed and what is it? And that's what I'm just asking. Like, we're not. This is not for us to decide. This is not a vote. This is a retreat. We're just discussing. But Carolee and Amy both thought that some of the themes that you have brought up are present within our values section.
if we show that, like, how we're doing those, that's what I'm saying. I don't think there's a lot of awareness around this. Like, everybody in this room knows it because you guys live and breathe it, right? And that's great. But I think it's really just a matter of how do we communicate that and how do we really bring those values front and center in all of our communications and at the board meetings, and just like really continue to like message and message and message and message, so that becomes like they really care about this. We are kind and safe. We act with integrity. We we embody one Howell, and what does that look like, and how are we seeing that in the district? I think that's the stuff where just to know that we really have eyes on it, and it's not just a statement that came out of a strategic plan is the key.
Yeah, okay, I agree. Stephen's statement about the community part made me kind of open my eyes a little bit more. So I agree. I don't know if we need like a whole poster. I don't think we need a poster of something.
A poster of our
I
values.
changed my mind. I do believe we need to communicate in other ways.
Well, I'm thinking if we want to be cohesive and that we show what we stand for, I think every school should have something on the wall that says we stand for these ideals in this district. I don't see anything wrong with that.
I think if you look at the value statements, there are 3 very specific value statements in our strategic plan that are really focused around people. And people, relationships, they deserve our attention every day. We are kind and safe. We act with integrity and accountable for the things that we say and the choices we make. Words and actions matter. And then to Carolee's point, the one Howell piece at the very bottom, those value statements, I think, are what you're referencing when you say forward-facing, and it's about getting that message out there and sharing those within our school and making them very visible and a part of our work every day. I think there's natural, connection there to those statements, and what I think probably is what maybe the board feels like is lagging or not quite there yet is we're just getting the lift of our strategic plan for the 25-26 school year. So you will begin to see and hear of these groups and the work taking place throughout this year and the next 5 years. And that work is going to evolve. We're going to see some things that go well. We're going to see some things that, wow, we didn't anticipate, and we got to make some adjustments in some of our action steps. I mean, that's what a good strategic plan is. If we achieved every goal within the first year, then we're not stretching ourselves. And so, it's just one of those things that this work will evolve over time. And but those 3 value statements are about the people, and we're an organization of people.
Well, couldn't we post something like that, at the entrance of every
I
school
think
to
we
show that
absolutely
we
could.
are united in that way?
Yeah, I think
almost
we
like
absolutely
the
could post
bottom-
our value statements.
Yeah, like the bottom, I'm not sure how many people in French South Middle are interested in our strong stewardship requires long-term planning, smart systems,
No, the ones he just listed, not those.
Because there might be some seventh graders.
That's
who-
how you get through high school.
Yeah, exactly. But like, anyway, so we don't need to, but there might be something simple that we've
I liked
already
what he
agreed
said.
upon
I like what he said.
that we can kick around. If you want to kick that
Yeah, I
around.
think we can definitely work with communications and figure out something that
Because
does
then you
that
walk
to
in the
that
door
point.
and there
Yeah,
it is, and
I agree.
that's awesome.
Yeah, okay. I want to make sure, so for Ron and for Jane, during this last conversation, I just want to make sure we heard from you as well. Is there anything else you want to share, Ron? So Ron's sitting as far from me as possible now, not on purpose, but it makes it harder maybe to catch eye contact. Was there anything else, Ron, you wanted to share?
No, I just want to say that this is the strategic plan for the school.
Yeah.
It has our values, it has our mission statement, it has measurables. That is what your performance is going to be evaluated on. Everybody knows it.
Yep.
So I don't want to micromanage what processes they want to put in place to achieve this.
Okay.
Just achieve it.
All right.
It's so easy.
So Director Pushkar is going to share something.
No, I don't have a lot to share. I just say that I agree with Ron's statement, and I agree with your statement, Stephen. Our core values are already there in our strategic plan, so.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. It is 12:39. That was the last part of our prepared conversations. Is there anything else, Mark? Or I'm sure we're all okay ending early, right? But is there anything else you want to share while you have all of our attention?
Nothing that I had prepared for.
Oh, exactly.
Again,
There we go.
just look forward to continuing to work with this amazing team and all of our teachers and staff across the district. We're 2 weeks away from having kids back. As I shared with some of the board yesterday, we had an amazing first week with our new teachers, and I got to tell you, it's always awesome to see all these people. And one of the things that I do is I ask them to kind of share with me. I like to see the hands. Who's a first-year teacher and who's new to the district? And we always have a very good mix of veterans coming to the district and brand new teachers. And one of the things that I just don't ever think you can take lightly is even if you're a veteran, you're new, you're learning, and when you come to a new place, you're kind of putting yourself out there. So our patience and our work with all of our new people. I know Ms. Simpkins certainly champions that we put a lot of time, effort, and energy into having staff come to the district, and it is our goal to continue to retain those individuals, make sure that this place is a great place for them to work and live, and just excited for that. We will have all of our teachers back next week, so we'll have almost 3,000 people back next week, so things will start to hip hop around here. We are ready. We are looking forward to it. And then August 18th, absolutely ready for just over 16,500 students to return to this district. So we are looking forward to that. Thank you.
Wonderful.
That is-
I have a point of personal privilege, Stephen, when you're ready.
Sure.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know who's in the room right now, but I just wanna share with you that the last 3 months have been a lot, but I want you, from my personal heart, to know that I value you and I see you, and I know that you are amazing and awesome. And as we get ready to start the new school year, I know I'll be getting back into my classroom in like a week, and I might be a little bit more distant because I'm a teacher too, but I want to just say that you guys are absolutely amazing. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping me learn all of the things that this crash course has been in, being a board member. And I respect you all very much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. My last thing I just want to share is just a thank you. This is a Saturday. This was like our yearly retreat. Just wanted to name Dr. Amy St. John, Glenn Hancock, Lisa Simpkins, Jennifer Joles, Mark Delaney, Jane Hepler, Michelle Jones, Scott Goen. We had 5 people here from Teachers Union who care enough about schools and students to be here on a Saturday morning as well. So I just wanted to name everyone. Mark Ponder was called into San Francisco on work, and so he was going to be here but could not. But I am very thankful for Director Olkey and Director Pushkar to also be joining us online as well, once again showing all of our shared commitment to the betterment of the district. So with that, do we have to do the whole motion to adjourn or anything like that?
Oh.
How this, we don't have to make any adjourn to adjourn, so.
Peace out.
What do you call this, like the Irish goodbye? Nothing like that, where you don't say goodbye to anybody, you just start walking away. So thank you all for joining us as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, bye.
I think we need to call it something besides a retreat.
Yeah.